What's good, ladies and gentlemen? It is your boy Xehther here, aka the guy your girl tells you not to worry about, back at it again to drop the most unheard of, uncommon, single most rare what if you will ever watch. What if Naruto was a Senju? Now guys, obviously this what if has been done a million times by everybody else, but it hasn't been done by me quite yet. And seeing as it hasn't been done quite by me yet, I figured I would come over, slam my gigantic schlong on the table and say, yo, those versions that you guys have heard before, those aren't the definitive ones. It's this one. So guys, please fasten your seatbelts, get your snacks, and stay seated because this is about to be a long one. I do hope you guys go on to enjoy the video, and the like goal for today's video is going to be 1,000 likes. Go ahead and surprise me if you guys can, but if you guys go on to hit 1,000, then I will be very much appreciated. That being said though guys, let's get into the intro and then get started with the video.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Alright boys, I need to say one quick thing before the video does however start. Quick thing, I literally just had knee surgery, so instead of being in my original setup place where I usually am sitting on my desk and I have my microphone set up, this time I'm actually going to be on my bed, so the audio quality might sound a little bit different than it usually does. However guys, please do bear with me today, seeing as today's video is going to be completely unfiltered, unscripted, and I'm just kind of going to be going off of whatever is on my mind at this current moment. So I do hope you guys still go on to enjoy today's video. That being said, let's get into the story of what if Naruto was a Senju. So I think that a great place to start this what if off would be on the day of Naruto's birth. Now I know Senjus don't exactly have one certain hair color, there's not one certain trademark thing that Senjus have. However, this Naruto, I felt that I wanted him to have brown hair. Just like you guys can see from the thumbnail that my lovely, thumbnail maker, Dank God made. Link in the description in case you guys want to go sub to him. He is an absolute Chad, so you might as well. And yeah, so basically brown hair Naruto. That's really the only change to Naruto's appearance that is going to be happening in this story, other than the fact that he's, you guys probably guessed that he's going to have wood style and all that stuff. So where we're starting all of this off is Naruto's birth. Now, the reason that Naruto is going to be a Senju in this what if is because I'm going off of the theory that Tsunade is Minato's mother. Secretly his mother and Don is his father. Seeing as Tsunade is a Senju, it would only go to reason that Minato would have some Senju DNA within himself. So we're kind of going to be going off of that theory to kind of base this whole what if off. So with that said, Naruto is born just like he is in the original canon, and this is when the masked man or Obito would arrive. Now when Obito does arrive, Obito would proceed to essentially take Naruto away and begin to, well, pretty much what's it called, he would begin to essentially he would begin to essentially enact his plan on destroying the Hidden Leaf Village, meaning the Nine Tails would be released, and all of that would quite literally go as many of you guys are probably expecting. The Nine Tails would end up unfortunately killing Minato and Kushina, and Naruto would be left in the hands of the very capable, very loving Hiruzen, who gave him spoiled milk. And I'm pretty sure he even gave him blankets and ramen. So best father figure, definitely would give him a 10 out of 10. Would definitely go to him if I could, because that's just what everybody wants, rotting milk and noodles, right? You know what I mean? Everybody loves that. Who doesn't love rotting milk and noodles? Anyways though, what ends up essentially happening is Naruto would end up growing up being raised by Hiruzen. Now for the first couple of years, Hiruzen is not that bad of a guy. Obviously he teaches Naruto manners, English, and he ends up teaching Naruto how to speak right and all of that other stuff. And one day Naruto would actually be playing outside when he is simply just outside, on the grass, and Naruto would just see a bunch of ninjas literally training outside of Hiruzen's office, because that is where he has his Anbu Black Ops members essentially train. And so Naruto would be watching this, and when he is seeing the shinobis fight against each other, the spars, Naruto's eyes would widen as his eyes would have a shimmer and they would begin to glisten as Naruto would just be completely enthralled by what he is witnessing. Naruto just feels a passion, a strong desire to do something like they are. It just looks fun and it just looks like Naruto's calling in his own words. So Naruto would begin to pretty much like jump up around and begin to play at being a ninja, when all of a sudden Naruto would essentially begin lifting his hand, like just literally making it rise up from the ground as a little small tree sapling would grow. Now, this is when Naruto would be called by Hiruzen as he is told to go inside and eat. Naruto would rush off away as it's at this point that the very next day would come around. Now, when the next day comes around, everybody would wake up. They would see a gigantic tree in the middle of nowhere as Hiruzen is just like shocked. He's like, how is this possible? He would begin to immediately ask what could have happened, and Naruto would be none the wiser. Years would proceed to essentially go on, as this is when Naruto would pretty much just be thrown out of, Hiruzen's care and pretty much just be given his own apartment at the age of 4 years old. It's at this point that during this whole time, Danzo wants to try to get Naruto because of the power of the Nine Tails, and what ends up happening is he becomes kind of a target by the whole village because Danzo proceeds to tell everybody, yo, did you know that that kid over there, he's kind of the Nine Tails Jinchuriki? Everybody's like, yo, pause, he's the Nine Tails? And Danzo is pretty much just planning, thinking, yeah, that's going to work perfectly. He's going to turn the village against Naruto. And when he's at his weakest, he's going to offer him a position, trying to be a fake father figure to Naruto so that he can take his power for himself. This is when word about the Nine Tails would spread, and Naruto would begin to get a lot of crap from a bunch of people. It wouldn't be very nice, and just like in the original, Naruto would be treated in a very horrible way. Now, a couple of weeks would go by of this, and when Naruto is pretty much at his lowest, Naruto's starving, Naruto is hungry, he would end up walking around the streets. As one man in particular would see Naruto walking around, and he would see a bunch of other villagers with shops just throwing things at a kid Naruto. He would think that that's just disgusting. And at this point, the Naruto would just smell the aroma in the air of the Ichiraku ramen shop place as Naruto looks inside, and he kind of just looks at the ground as he's expecting to be yelled at or shunned away. But it's at this moment that the man would give him a big bright smile and say, "You want something to eat?" Naruto would look at him as he would give like a huge bright smile. Like, Naruto feels so much happiness at this current moment, and he is just so incredibly happy. He feels like welcome for the first time in his life. Now at this point, Naruto would take a seat, and Ichiraku would proceed to essentially whip up a quick miso ramen bowl, Naruto's favorite from the Ichiraku ramen shop. Now this is the first time he'll ever have a bowl, and Naruto would take his first bite as he completely loves it. And at this point, Naruto's trademark favorite food would be welcomed into the show, ramen. At this point, Ichiraku would look at a Naruto who would smile and really just say, I don't have any money. At this point, Ichiraku would say not to worry about it, and that if he wants, he can even come back the next day for another bowl. Naruto would have a huge smile go across his face as he would just be thinking, thank you, thank you, thank you. At this point, Naruto would go off running towards his home as he would end up going to sleep with a big bright smile on his face. The next day, Naruto would eat some cereal and milk as he would kind of begin to do sit-ups, push-ups, and all that stuff, trying to train to become a ninja the soonest he possibly can. Now guys, if the audio does sound a little bit weird, keep in mind I am low-key laying down, so the energy levels might be a little lower, but the storytelling is probably going to be heightened just by the fact that I can't do anything but talk. So yeah. Anyways though guys, what ends up happening is Naruto would have a pretty decent day today. A couple of people would still be rude to him, but Naruto would be looking forward to when he finally goes to the Ichiraku ramen shop. Now, it's at this point that Naruto would enter, and Ichiraku would actually have a full table of guests. Now Naruto, seeing this, would wait patiently outside until everybody would finally leave and Naruto would finally walk inside of the shop, when Ichiraku would serve him his bowl and give him a huge smile, thinking that some kid of his age shouldn't deserve to be living this way, hoping that somebody can give him food. So Ichiraku, when Naruto was done eating his food, or Tetsuji, Toshi, I don't know the Ichiraku ramen guy's name, but I'm just gonna call him Ramen Guy. The ramen guy would quite literally look at Naruto as he would lean over the counter and say, "Hey, what's your name, kid?" Naruto would proceed to say, "My name's Naruto," as the ramen guy would just look at him and be like, "How would you like a job?" Naruto's eyes would widen as he would immediately be like, "Are you serious?" Now Ichiraku at this moment would literally just tell him, yeah, he could work in the back and sort things out while nobody else can see him. That way nobody will be bothered by the fact that, you know, he's working there and his business will still be running. Naruto could even get some food every day. Naruto would just be so incredibly happy. Like, the look on Naruto's face would just be glowing, because Naruto feels welcome for the first time ever. And while Naruto doesn't exactly feel like this is something that he can quite call a home yet, Naruto feels a little bit of acceptance for the first time in his life, ever since he left the care of Hiruzen. And at this point, what ends up happening is Naruto would begin to work there for about 5 months. And here is where Naruto would find a family of sorts, because the ramen guy's daughter would be very kind to Naruto, and Teuchi, I think that's his name, Teuchi, would pretty much be extremely kind to Naruto, aka the ramen guy. Now, Naruto is just happy because in his eyes, he found a family of sorts, something that he can go to. And so what ends up happening is one day when Danzo is walking across the streets trying to enact this plan of acting kind towards Naruto, he would tell Naruto that he could come live with him. But Naruto would say that he doesn't need to, saying that he's happy in his own house. Not saying a word about him working with Ichiraku or the ramen guy or any of that stuff. But Naruto would quite literally just proceed to smile as he would like just be happy. Like, truly just happy as he walks off, and Danzo was just like in complete like shock. He's just speechless, because in his eyes he thought that this plan was going to work, make Naruto feel vulnerable and then take advantage when he does. But at this point, Hiruzen would get wind of the fact that Danzo was trying to get baby Naruto, or kid Naruto, to go be in the Anbu with him, and Hiruzen would put a very firm foot down, saying that that's not going to happen. That if he tries to make any more contact with Naruto, he will be pretty much exiled from the village for treachery, I think, for pretty much being a traitor. Okay, that's pretty much what Hiruzen ends up telling Danzo. And what happened from here is Danzo would give Hiruzen the fakest smile as he walks out of the room angrily, and at this point, years would pretty much flash by. During this whole time, Naruto would have done a little bit of random training, and the ramen guy would have actually gone to libraries to get Naruto scrolls for Naruto to use them and try to learn some chakra control. However, one thing that Naruto would notice, however, is that his chakra control is complete dookie, because Naruto has so much chakra. Naruto is an Uzumaki, a Senju, a Namikaze, so he has a lot of chakra. Not only that, but he is the literal host of the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. So Naruto has almost an infinite amount of chakra. And so with that comes it being very difficult, very, very difficult to control. And so what happens after this is Naruto is kind of, what's it called? What's a good word for me to use? Naruto is just having a very rough time with controlling his chakra. So what instead Naruto decides to do is pretty much try his hand at hand-to-hand combat. So instead of doing anything else, the first thing that Naruto would ever focus on is taijutsu. He would run laps, he would throw kicks, he would throw punches, do sit-ups, and put like just anything you guys can really think of. Naruto would do all of that in order to get just a little bit stronger than he was the day before. And this would honestly work very well. a couple of years would go by, and seeing as Naruto finally has like the attention of anybody at all, because the ramen guy truly does see Naruto as somewhat of a son to him. He came to him when he was in need, and ever since then, the ramen guys felt happy because it feels as if they have a complete family now. Naruto filled the void that his wife left when she passed away, and it's just kind of like a 50-50 trade-off where the ramen guy got to fill a hole up and Naruto got to fill the family that he never had. And so what ends up happening from here is Naruto proceeds to essentially keep growing until he finally makes it to the first day of the academy. Now, it is here on the first day of the academy where Naruto would pretty much walk into the classroom and see Iruka Sensei. Now, when all of this is going down, he would pretty much be explaining to the entirety of the class that they're going to be taking an assessment to see exactly where all of them stack up. Now, keep in mind, guys, they're all like 10 to 9 years old now because they end up being in the academy for, I think it's 3 years. So they're like 10 to 9 years old. And Naruto, I'm just going to be saying, is going to be 10 years old, okay? Naruto's going to be 10 years old, so by the time he graduates from the academy, he is going to be 13. And so is Sasuke. Sakura, I'm just going to say, is going to also be 13. And the rest of the ages are kind of going to be varying quite a little bit. But that's pretty much the main bottom line. What ends up going down here is they all end up taking a written exam, where all of them are kind of just like, okay. And after this, Iruka would tell them all that they can finally go outside and play around with some shuriken. At this point, all of the kids would go outside and Iruka would begin to essentially explain the trials that they're going to be having. They would have to run through this obstacle course and throw a bunch of shuriken at certain targets. Now, when Naruto would go up there, he would proceed to essentially like just run around and throw shuriken. As you know, he's having a pretty good time. He's smiling. He's happy, and Naruto he's vibing, to be honest. You know what I mean? By the way, guys, in case you guys heard a little bit of background noise from like a door like being open and closed, my mom came in to check on me real quick, but no big deal. Anyways, though, what ends up happening from here is Naruto would proceed to essentially continue doing everything until everybody else would finally clear their own, obstacle course or task. After this, they would all be told that they are going to be doing sparring. And when Naruto hears this, he thinks back to when he was a kid and saw all the Jonin do the same. So Naruto hearing this would be like, that's awesome. And at this point, Naruto would essentially proceed to get into the circle as another young boy by the name of Sasuke Uchiha would walk inside. Now, Sasuke at this point hasn't lost his family, so he's not on his emo stuff. And Sasuke would create the sign of like sparring with Naruto. And at this point, they would both rush at each other. Now, Naruto would throw a punch to which Sasuke would weave, and at this point would throw a punch right at Naruto's ribs. As Naruto would get punched, he would be sent back a little bit, and he would say, "Ah!" As it's at this point that Naruto would look at Sasuke's direction, and Sasuke would be running in to throw another kick to end off the battle. But Naruto would stick his hand out, and when he does, this wall of wood, this wooden beam would literally just come between both of them. As it's there, and Sasuke just kicks into it as he proceeds to jump back, and Iruka, seeing like this just random wooden plank coming out of nowhere, would be shocked, to say the least. At this point, Iruka would immediately stop the match and tell Hiruzen about what happened today. Hiruzen would end up being shocked, saying that there's no way. Only the first Hokage and Yamato have these abilities. So after this, what would end up happening is Hiruzen would end up actually summoning Naruto into his office, as well as another ninja, who I'm pretty sure is no secret at all. It's going to be Yamato. So Yamato would look at Naruto as he would proceed to ask him what he did. And Naruto would say he doesn't know, he just moved his hand. Yamato would question if he even had to create any hand signs. And Naruto would say, hand signs? He would say, oh, like for jutsu and stuff. And Yamato would be like, yeah, what hand signs did you create? Naruto would say that he simply put his palm out and tried to keep Sasuke away from him. And Yamato would be shocked. Quick water break. Yamato would be shocked. And at this point, Naruto would proceed to essentially just tell him that, as Hiruzen and Yamato would both be shocked. For the following 3 years during the time that Naruto's going to be in the academy, Naruto's actually going to be under the supervision of Yamato, who would end up training Naruto after the academy. And after that, Naruto would end up going to Teuchi's shop, where he would, help him with making ramen in the back. And after practicing with his wood style, he's now able to make bowls, like literal wooden bowls, that are pretty useful for Teuchi because it makes him extra money, and now he's able to sell those bowls and make extra profit on the side, which Naruto gets a pretty hefty amount of, the little profit that he does end up making. So it's a pretty good win-win for both of them. So Naruto now has a little bit of extra money on the side, and the ramen shop is just going good. At this point, what ends up happening is Yamato would simply just keep training Naruto for these 3 years, and after the 3 years have finally finished, Naruto at this point actually learned a lot of things from Yamato when in regards to wood style and all that stuff. What Naruto ended up learning was essentially how to water walk, how to tree walk, and how to manipulate his wood style jutsu. One thing that they ended up realizing really soon afterwards is that Naruto is far more powerful than anything that Yamato could have ever mustered at that age. Because when Yamato was at that age, he was barely being taught like very simple jutsus with his wood style. But one thing that Yamato come to realize is that Naruto has so much chakra, basically an infinite pool of chakra, that his creations are on like such a large scale. And Hiruzen at this point truly now believes that if anybody will be able to get to the level anywhere near what the first Hokage was, it's going to be Naruto. Naruto has the power to maybe surpass the god of shinobi himself. So at this point, Hiruzen is putting a lot more care into Naruto and acting differently towards him, which would kind of come as a little bit of a shocker towards Naruto, because before, Hiruzen didn't truly care about Naruto as much as he probably should have. But now that Naruto has these gifts and has these abilities, Hiruzen all of a sudden treats Naruto so much different. And that kind of makes Naruto feel weird in a sense, because it's as if he only cares about him for one ability. But Naruto just kind of shrugs it off and continues with his training. Now, I'm going to be fast forwarding to the 3rd year of the academy, where all of them are taking their final exams. Iruka would tell everybody to go on up there, as he would tell them all to basically pass their test by creating a shadow clone. Naruto at this point is still really bad at creating simple jutsus, such as fire styles like shadow clones, because that requires a precision of chakra control. And Naruto still doesn't quite have that down, so he can't even create a normal shadow clone. However, one thing that they ended up discovering about Naruto from a young age was the fact that Naruto actually has the innate ability to create large-scale jutsu. So jutsus that require large amounts of chakra are things that Naruto can do with a lot of ease. So what ends up happening is when Iruka tells Naruto to go on up there, Naruto would pull a Kakashi. If you guys do remember, when Kakashi did his test, he ended up making a multi-shadow clone jutsu instead of a normal clone jutsu. So that is literally what Naruto would do. He would put two hand signs together, as he would say, multi-shadow clone jutsu. And at this point, a bunch of shadow clones of Naruto would appear in the room, literally filling the entirety of the room up. As Iruka would say, "Very good, Naruto." He would proceed to pretty much give him a passing grade, and everybody would be like, "Yeah, expected." As a bunch of other people would just be shocked, thinking that there's no way, like, what? You know what I mean? And Sasuke at this point would just be in the back silent as he passed his test as well. After this, Iruka would tell everybody that their Jonin senseis will be coming to pick them up tomorrow, so to come into class, and that they will only be there for about 30 minutes or so. So everybody would end up showing up to class the very next day, where obviously Kakashi is going to be late, because Kakashi isn't Kakashi unless he's late. So Kakashi would end up, of course, showing up really late to pick up his Genin team, as he ends up telling them all to meet him up at the roof about 2 hours after he was supposed to pick them up, and everybody would meet up at the roof. At this point, they would all be giving each other their goals, with Naruto saying that his goal is to become the Hokage Sasuke would say that he wants to take revenge on a certain somebody. Sakura would twiddle her fingers like the trash bag she is, and that would be that. After this, Kakashi would explain to them all to meet him at the forest training camp, or no, camp, let's just say camp, and they would all nod their heads as they just kind of like walk off. At this point, Sakura would turn to Sasuke and be like, "Hey Sasuke, why don't we?" But Sasuke would literally be gone already. Naruto would be sitting there as he wouldn't even be looking at Sakura, because this version of Naruto doesn't have that crazy obsession with Sakura that our normal Naruto in canon does. So what ends up happening is Naruto would simply walk off and end up going to the shop, where he would begin to help with making ramen in the back, and he would pretty much just be working for about 2 hours until finally he has to go meet up with Yamato for some slight training. Now, it's at this point that Yamato would clench his two hands together as he would show Naruto another jutsu, a wood style jutsu. He would create a gigantic wooden dragon. Now, Naruto, upon seeing this, would ask Yamato how he did that. Naruto would put two hand signs together and he would begin to pretty much imitate all of the movements of Yamato. And when Naruto creates the wood dragon, it would quite literally be 10 times the size of Yamato's dragon. So just imagine this huge, gigantic, like snake looking dragon made out of wood, and it's just coming at you. That would be terrifying. I don't know about y'all, but that would just be like terrifying. So Naruto would create that, and Yamato would be in complete shock. At this point, Naruto is just in his own league. Naruto is in a league of his own. So what ends up happening after this is Yamato would look at Naruto's direction and just be like, okay, yep, this kid, he's too much. He is too much. And Yamato would just look at Naruto saying that he did a great job for today. That's it. Yamato would walk off looking down at the ground thinking there's no way that this kid is already better at him than wood style than Yamato was after all of these years of training. And Naruto is just gifted when it comes to wood style. All right, that bottom line, Naruto is just so gifted when it comes to wood style. So what ends up happening here is after creating this sort of dynamic that I've already created with like the origin story, I think now is a time where I can like swiftly carry the rest of the story in a more fast-paced direction. So what happens after this is basically what's it called? What ends up happening after this is basically everybody meets up with Kakashi the next day for their training. Now at this point, Naruto would sit by a tree as he would lay down, and Sasuke would simply be like standing up by Sakura, posted up, looking all menacing and like trying to establish his dominance as Naruto just passes out. Now when he wakes up, he would see Kakashi in his face. He's like, "Wake up, Naruto, Naruto." Naruto would wake up as he's like, "Oh, sorry, passed out. Took a while." As Kakashi would say, "Yeah, whatever." He would proceed to essentially explain the rules as he scratches the back of his head, feeling a little embarrassed at the fact that he was that late. But what ended up going down from here is after Kakashi explains the rules of the bell test, Sakura would point out that there's only 2 bells. How are we supposed to pass this? Kakashi would say that that's for them to figure out, and at this point, Sasuke would look at the bells, look at Naruto and Sakura as he thinks to himself that if anybody's going to be passing this test, it's going to be him. Sasuke, as soon as the test would be announced, would rush in to hide somewhere, to basically hide his location so he can catch Kakashi off guard. Naruto would do so as well, and at this point, all of them would just be watching as Kakashi takes out the Make Out Paradise series books. After Naruto sees this, he would think that he's literally making a joke out of this situation, as Naruto would proceed to look at his team and say, "We gotta go do something now." Sasuke would say that he needs to wait for the right time, and Naruto would say that they need to create the right time. Sasuke would look at him and say, "You can go on by yourself. Sakura and myself will stay back." Naruto would just look at Sasuke and be like, "Never listen." He would jump down from the trees as he would say, "Multi-shadow clone jutsu." Immediately, hundreds of Naruto clones would come in out of nowhere, and Kakashi would throw the book into the air as it's at this moment that Kakashi would proceed to quite literally kick a bunch of the clones as he just begins to take them out, like as if it was nothing. Because these clones would come in and try to use taijutsu to take out Kakashi. Kakashi, whose rival is literally a taijutsu genius, so it doesn't pan out too well for the Naruto clones, to say the least. However, when the real Naruto clone starts to get close, there's about 20 clones left, and at this point, Naruto would say, "All together, Wood Style, Dragon Jutsu!" As at this point, gigantic beast of dragon would rise from the ground, and Kakashi, seeing this, would think, ain't no way, as these dragons would quite literally come down as they would rush at Kakashi's direction, and Kakashi would have to dodge each and every single one, as one of them would end up pretty much hitting Kakashi and sending him crashing into a tree, where Kakashi's body would quite literally slam, breaking 4 trees in its path, as Kakashi would then stand up like weakly and unveil his Sharingan, as he would say that this kid is no joke, he has Wood Style. He would just be thinking to himself how that is even possible, as he would be thinking, it's Minato's son, right? Minato didn't have Wood Style. He'd be thinking, did Kushina cheat? And then he'd be like, no, there's no way Kushina did that. Ain't no way, she's not like that. But as these thoughts are going through Kakashi's head, Sasuke would have finally gotten down from the tree, as he would at this point be rushing at Kakashi's direction, throwing a bunch of kicks and trying to attack Kakashi with taijutsu movements. Kakashi would immediately realize that his attacks are almost on par with the level of Naruto's taijutsu attacks. So when he realizes this, he pretty much pushes Sasuke off with his forearm, as Sasuke is sent into the air, where Sasuke would spin and say, "Fire Style! Fireball Jutsu!" He would shoot a fireball at Kakashi's direction, to which Kakashi would counter by using another fire style of his own, which would catch Sasuke off guard, and before Sasuke could actually be hit with it, Naruto would slam both hands into the ground, as a gigantic pillar of wood would be between Sasuke and Kakashi. Sasuke would look at Naruto's direction, as he would say, "Didn't need your help." He would land on the ground, as he would then look at Kakashi's direction, and Naruto would say that he will need his help this time. So Naruto would look at Sasuke and say, "Come on, you gotta trust me or we won't pass this test." And Sasuke would begrudgingly say, "Fine, I'll follow my lead." He would rush at Kakashi's direction, as at this point, Sasuke would begin to throw a flurry of taijutsu kicks, and Naruto would create 5 clones. 5 Wood Style clones, that is. So when Kakashi would hit them, they wouldn't immediately poof into nothingness. And what ends up happening is these clones actually end up dealing a solid amount of damage to Kakashi. Kakashi is pretty shocked because he never expected for some clones to be able to get this much damage in. It's just ludicrous. So when Kakashi's finally done with taking out these clones, Sasuke and Naruto were just pressing Kakashi more and more and more, until Naruto finally says, "Fine, you don't want to lose to like this, then have a load of this," as he would pretty much like slam his hand down on the ground and say, "Wood Golem Jutsu." A gigantic wooden golem would appear out of nowhere, as Kakashi's eyes would widen, and Naruto would begin to pretty much approach Kakashi on top of a gigantic wood golem. Now Sasuke would be on the ground as he's looking up at Naruto, just thinking, how is this even possible? He's a genin, he shouldn't be this strong. Kakashi would be thinking, ain't no way that this kid is this strong, like stop playing with me. He's even better at Wood Style than Yamato is. Now keep in mind, Kakashi does actually know Yamato in this story, because Kakashi had a mission with Yamato when they were younger. So yeah, that being said, Kakashi would just be thinking that, as at this point Yamato would just be in his mind, and the wood golem would proceed to throw punch Kakashi's direction, as it would crush Kakashi, and like literally minutes later Kakashi would wake up thinking, what happened? But the 2 bells would actually be in Naruto and Sasuke's hands, as Sasuke is dwindling it, like spinning it in his hands, and Naruto is just saying, "So did we pass?" And Kakashi would just be thinking, "Yeah, you passed." As he proceeds to get up, pretty damaged, he would say, "Yeah, you guys passed." As at this point, they would smile, and Sakura would just be sitting behind them, just like, "Yeah, we passed." But Kakashi would just be thinking, "You didn't do anything. Why are you celebrating?" Now at this point, everybody would kind of go their separate ways, and Sasuke would nod at Naruto's direction, indicating that he has some sign of respect towards Naruto. But Sasuke would also be wondering, hey, before Naruto leaves, he would say, "Hey, how did you do that? Naruto would say, what, the wood stuff? As Sasuke would say, don't play dumb. Yeah, the wood stuff. Naruto would say, I don't know, I just have this ability. Ever since I was a kid, I've been able to manifest wood things. And Sasuke would say, isn't that the jutsu of the first Hokage? Naruto would say that it is. And Sasuke would just be like, so, looks like I might have a rival after all. As they would all end up going their separate directions. And for the following 2 weeks, what would go down is they end up going on pretty much worthless missions. Catching cats, walking old ladies down the streets, getting literally villagers groceries for them, and that's all that they pretty much do. They're literally just being what's it called, they're literally being they're being treated like nothing, because they're having to quite literally catch cats and all this stuff, and they're not being tested or tried at all. So Kakashi, obviously noticing this, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura all being irritated at the fact that these missions are way too easy, would end up saying something to Hiruzen, to which Hiruzen would proceed to say, very well then, as he would proceed to simply call towards his shinobi as they would come inside with a random man. Now this man would be Tazuna, as Tazuna would be like, you expect these ninjas to take care of me? I paid good money for this mission. Hiruzen, as he would proceed to pretty much just walk out of the room drunk after he just disrespected the team. Now, when this is all going down, they would all have weird face expressions mixed with Naruto was just thinking, Kakashi is just sitting there plain faced. Sasuke is just that guy was annoying, and Sakura would just be thinking, cha, you know what I mean? As everybody is kind of just not up for this mission whatsoever. But they all end up meeting by the village gates the next day, and this is when the first mission, the Land of the Waves arc, will finally begin. Now, when they would all meet, what ends up going down is essentially they proceed to essentially make their way towards the Land of the Waves, when all of a sudden, about 30 minutes into their journey, they would notice a puddle. Naruto would be like, yeah, puddle in the middle of daytime when it's sunny outside and it hasn't rained for weeks. Isn't that interesting? He would just look at the direction of the puddle and be like, yeah, no, not funny. He would proceed to just walk by thinking, yeah, acting as if he doesn't know what's going on. And Kakashi would, of course, still be striken down by the two demon brothers, or falsely taken down, you know what I mean? And so Sakura is really the only one that truly thinks that Kakashi died. And this is when Sasuke and Naruto would both end up taking out the demon brothers simultaneously. Sasuke would take one of them out by grabbing the chain that was pretty much going to pierce into Tazuna. As he pretty much yanks the ninja into him, he would proceed to pretty much knock him out by kicking the side of his skull and just dropping the demon brother on the ground. But the other one would be taken out by Naruto, as he pretty much puts both of his hands together, creating a wooden dome around the demon brother, which it pretty much ended up trapping him and not letting him move at all. And with this version of Naruto, guys, I do truly want to state one thing. Naruto has the innate ability of creating these wood style attacks without actually weaving hand signs. He can quite literally just move his hand, but for the more advanced stuff, things that he didn't come up with, like the golem jutsu or the dragon jutsu, things that Yamato taught him, he does use wood style, because most of the things that he does come from his imagination. And I am changing the properties of Naruto's wood style just a little bit for the sake of the story, but not really that big of a change. So what ends up going down from here is Naruto would proceed to essentially walk off with his team, as Kakashi at this point already was made aware of the fact that this mission was definitely not a C rank mission, because a C rank mission doesn't involve literal bandits or stuff like that to come in and literally attack you guys when you guys are trying to carry out a mission. So he would press Tazuna about that, saying, this isn't a C rank mission, is it? But Tazuna would end up guilt tripping Kakashi, and the rest of the team would actually agree that they're ready for this mission. They want to do this mission. So what ends up happening is they all end up going, and from here, about 2 hours would go by until this fog would appear out of nowhere. This thick mist would come in out of nowhere. Now, obviously, we know this to be Zabuza, but the team doesn't. So while they're walking, Kakashi would be like alerted, as he can just sense danger coming in. And so Kakashi would say, "Everybody duck!" As all of the Team 7 literally jumps up or ducks as a blade would go right past him. And into this moment that Zabuza, the demon mist, the 7 ninja swordsman, the demon of the mist, Zabuza Momochi, would be pretty much just shown to the team. At this point, when they see Zabuza, they are all just like, "Yo, what?" But they don't have enough time to kind of react to all of this situation, because Zabuza just arrived. He's on top of a sword, and the first words that he says would be, "Kakashi Hatake, pleasure to meet you." As at this point, Kakashi would look at Zabuza, Zabuza would see Kakashi, and they would both stare each other down. As at this point, this is when like everybody would just kind of be in a standstill until Zabuza like what literally jumps down and creates a bunch of clones. To which this is when Kakashi would say, "Everybody, stay back," as he would rush in to fight Zabuza, and this would go literally exactly how it does into canon, until Zabuza traps Kakashi in the water prison jutsu. Now, after watching this entire battle go down, Naruto has a pretty good idea of what Zabuza's fighting style is like. So what ends up happening is Naruto would proceed to look at Zabuza and think, "Alright, I have one shot at this." As he would rush in, walking on the water, Sasuke would be like, "What?" As he's like, "I can't even do that." But Naruto would rush in at Zabuza's direction, as he would proceed to quite literally create two gigantic hands to rise from the earth. As it would rush at Zabuza's direction, Naruto would go in as well, as he would proceed to quite literally jump up into the air and throw shuriken at Zabuza. To which Zabuza would throw, like literally create a clone to pretty much like dodge all the shuriken for him. But at this point, Zabuza would see a gigantic wooden fist coming at his direction. To which Zabuza would just be like, "Ain't no way." And at this point, Naruto would smile as he like literally just goes, "Yes!" As Zabuza would have had to let go of the prison, or else he would have been in a lot of pain. So Zabuza lets go of the prison jutsu, and Kakashi is finally let free. To which at this point, Kakashi would say, "Thank you, Naruto," coughing as he's just like, "But now leave it to me." As he would unveil his Sharingan, and at this point, the real battle would begin. As this pretty much goes just like it does in canon, until Haku arrives and says that she's a tracking ninja from the hidden Mist Village. Okay, so yesterday's mini break ended up turning into a longer break than expected, and it ended up turning into a whole day break. So yeah, I'm back literally one day after I just recorded the previous last like 40 minutes. So I'm kind of just going to be picking off right where I think I left off. So obviously Haku literally ended up just taking Zabuza away and pretty much just faking the role of being a tracking ninja from the hidden Mist Village. So after all of this stuff ends up happening, what we are going to essentially have go down is Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Tazuna, and Kakashi going off to Tazuna's house so that Kakashi can take a rest. Now, this resting period is going to last, let's say, 2 weeks. Because in the original canon, I believe it was 2 weeks or 1 week, but we're just going to go with 2 this time. So obviously Kakashi is pretty much put to bed, where he is now going to be resting because he overuses Sharingan. And from here, what happens is Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura are basically just having time for each other to kind of just like be around each other more frequently than normal, because now they have to sleep in the same house, same beds, same rooms. So what ends up essentially going down is Naruto would go outside to essentially start training for his wood style. He would also begin to try to do a little bit of chakra training to essentially try to learn how to focus chakra and create jutsus. Now, when Naruto is outside, Sasuke would actually be walking by, and when Sasuke walks by, he would notice Naruto struggling to build a jutsu or to create a jutsu. Now, when Sasuke sees this, he would question Naruto why he struggles so hard to create low-level jutsus. That should be the easiest thing in the world. However, Naruto ends up explaining to Sasuke that it's not that easy. It isn't something that Naruto has full control over, because of the fact that Naruto has so much chakra that it's almost impossible for him to concentrate it into small portions without letting it all go haywire or loose. And so Sasuke, hearing this, would understand. He would then perform a fire style Fire Phoenix Jutsu, as Naruto would be quite impressed by this, and Sasuke would say that I bet you this jutsu could probably melt that wood style of yours. As Naruto would smile, and he would then look at Sasuke as he would say, care to test it out? And so, from here, literally 2 weeks worth of, no, not 2 weeks, but almost 2 weeks. 2 weeks minus 2 days, so like that's like 12 days. Yeah, 12 days. 12 days of them essentially training together and trying to see how their fighting styles match with one another. By the end of these 2 weeks, Sasuke would have a one thing clear to himself: Naruto is in a league of his own. Now, while Naruto may not have a bunch of low tier jutsus that every other character in the world does have, Naruto does have a whole lot of high ranking jutsu. Meaning Naruto has something like the multi-shadow clone jutsu, because even though I never quite covered the Mitsuki Naruto being manipulated, that stuff did happen. It's just that that's such a like irrelevant part of the story nowadays that I almost always forget to cover it. So because I didn't, I'm going to cover it now. So Naruto manipulated by Mitsuki on the test because, you know, why not? And no, he didn't get manipulated by Mitsuki, but someone else did. He overheard that. He ended up catching the kid in the act, brought the scroll to Mitsuki, took him out, reported it to the Hokage, and that's how that situation played out. Or at least how I would have had it played out if I would have actually covered it. But it just seems so like kind of a moot point, you know, there's no real point. So instead, what ends up happening here is Naruto just proceeded to continue on with his life. So what ends up happening is Naruto and Sasuke would end up sparring, and Sasuke would end up actually learning water walking and tree walking during this time, through Naruto teaching Sasuke for about 2 days. Sasuke would learn in 2 days because Sasuke, like, at first Naruto was giving him tips, but Sasuke was like, I can do it on my own. And so that's kind of the training route that Sasuke and Naruto have been on for these past couple of days. Sakura, noticing how hard they are both training, would have been a little bit induced to trying to do her own mini training. So for like the last week or so, she would have done a slight little bit of training, meaning she got a little stronger, but in the grand scheme of things, that's pretty irrelevant. What ends up happening afterwards though, guys, is Kakashi would end up, of course, waking up. Now, when Kakashi wakes up, he would end up seeing Naruto and Sasuke training outside, and Kakashi would basically be wearing crutches, as he's like, alright, time to teach you guys your lesson, as he would go outside to try to teach them tree walking, but he would actually see Sasuke literally run up the tree, jump down, and shoot 3 Fire Phoenix style jutsus at Naruto, as Naruto would slam his hands onto the ground, creating a prison, like a dome around Naruto. And at this point, from the ground itself, a bunch of Narutos would literally rise as they would rush at Sasuke, who was in the air, and he would build like a sort of cross shape with, like, he would kind of like cross his arms in front of himself as he rushes down onto the Naruto wood clones. Now, when he would hit these clones, Sasuke would end up smiling as he would quite literally proceed to use a substitution jutsu, appearing inside of the dome that Naruto was currently in, as he would say, checkmate. And Naruto would smile. As Sasuke has a kunai to his neck, Naruto would press his neck into it, revealing that was just a wood clone. And at this point, Naruto would appear behind Sasuke saying, no, checkmate to me. As he would say, you were playing chess? I mean, you were playing checkers, but this was really chess. As at this point, Sasuke would fall and be like, alright, goodbye. As he would quite literally be exhausted of chakra. Kakashi, seeing this, would smile, thinking that their teamwork has definitely come a long way ever since the fight against Tazuna. So what ends up happening is basically what's it called? What ends up happening is essentially they all continue having this little routine until after one more day of Kakashi healing, they finally end up making their way towards the bridge. Now at this time, Tazuna, or no, not Tazuna, but Zabuza has actually healed quite well, might I add. And Haku and him have done a little bit of training for about 5 days. So not only did he heal, but he trained for 5 days. So this is going to be a much stronger Zabuza than the one who originally fought against Kakashi, to even things out a little bit. Come on, we have to even out the playing field at least a little bit, right? So what ends up essentially going down from here is we would have all of our characters end up making their way towards the bridge, until eventually about, let's say, 2 hours in, Zabuza would appear and create his hidden mist jutsu, which would cause a lot of fog to appear, and from here, this is where we will pick off more of the action. So as soon as all of this happens, we would essentially have Zabuza rushing into the scene as he would appear right behind Kakashi saying, "It appears you owe me a rematch, Kakashi, of the Sharingan gun." Kakashi would lift his headband as Zabuza would smile, unsheathing his blade. He would turn towards Kakashi's direction, and in simultaneous fashion, they would both rush at each other. Kakashi would literally lunge at him with a kunai as he would block Zabuza's strike with his sword, and this would quite literally be going on back and forth, similar to the original fight at first, but then it would slowly start to change towards the end. But since it changes towards the end, I think it's safe to assume we should hop over to Sasuke Naruto versus Haku. So the way that this all starts off is Haku would end up rushing in Sasuke's direction, holding back a lot of intent to kill and a lot of the actual skill that, Haku truly has. So it would be more of an even battle between Sasuke and Haku until Naruto would say that it's his turn and he would rush in, and then it would become Naruto and Sasuke versus Haku, to which at this point Haku would then be forced to have to use more speed, more taijutsu prowess, and this is when they would start being put on the back foot. However, Naruto's ability to create multiple wood clones and multi-shadow clones, plus Sasuke's ability to create clones, would kind of even the situation out. Haku would be forced to take out multiple onslaughts of clones of Sasuke and Naruto, and this would begin to cause Haku to be pushed back, causing Haku to realize that in this situation, while using normal jutsus, Haku quite literally stands zero chance, because at this point, Naruto would have basically been getting ready to almost unveil one of his ultimate jutsus, the wooden golem jutsu. That is the strongest jutsu that Naruto has in his arsenal. It's half of the size, no, not half of the size, but 3/4 of the size of Hashirama's wood golem jutsu, which is a massive thing made out of wood that probably can kill you by just hitting you once. So yeah, really think about that for a second. What ends up happening here, guys, is literally let's see. What ends up happening here is Haku would end up basically rushing at Sasuke's direction, and in the middle would proceed to kick both Naruto and Sasuke away from him, as at this point they would both be split up just a little bit. And this point Haku would say, "Demon Ice Crystal Mirror Jutsu," as a bunch of mirrors would appear out of nowhere. Simultaneously, at least 20 mirrors would appear around them, creating a dome like jutsu. And at this point we would have Naruto and Sasuke looking around saying, "What is this?" Haku at this point would begin to jump through the mirrors before even teasing anything or trying to appear high and mighty, would quite literally begin to go towards knocking out Sasuke, throwing a bunch of senbon at Sasuke's direction. At this point, Naruto would have basically been essentially trying to dodge all of the senbon, but as he's dodging, he loses his sight over Sasuke, who is also trying to dodge a bunch of the senbon at the same time. Naruto has greater speed than Sasuke, so Sasuke would end up getting impaled by a bunch of senbon, and one of them would actually hit a pretty vital spot, which would cause Sasuke's body to quite literally drop limp, as immediately more senbon would crash right into Sasuke's body, and Sasuke would fall onto the ground as he would say, Naruto. He would fall onto the ground, and Naruto would see Sasuke's almost lifeless looking body slam onto the ground. Immediately, Naruto would feel his heartbeat stop, as it would then begin to pulse rapidly. It would begin beating over and over and over and over until Naruto literally loses all sense of himself. His eyes would turn a crimson like color as Naruto would stare into his own soul, this dark abyss. He would see a gigantic demonic looking like fox, as a slight bit of chakra red aura would begin to engulf Naruto. Naruto would look at Haku's direction as he would say, "You're dead." He would immediately rush at Haku's direction as he would begin to literally blitz at the speed of light itself, crushing Haku's mask. In the original, what ended up happening was Naruto was able to hold himself back due to the fact that he knew who Haku was, and he did end up feeling a little bit of guilt when he was about to kill him. However, this time, he doesn't care. So what ends up happening this time, Naruto slams Haku into the ground, and immediately he would yell out a screech to the heavens as he would say, "Die!" He would literally plunge his fist right into Haku's face, as Haku's face would be literally beat into a pulp. Naruto would punch Haku so hard the skull would cave in on itself, and Naruto would stand up as blood would be dripping from his fist. At this point, Naruto would let out a gigantic screech which would break all the mirrors, and it would actually cause a lot of like what's it called, splash damage to hit over towards Kakashi and Zabuza's battle. At this point, Kakashi's actually been on the back foot, and Kakashi was actually just about to lose to Zabuza. However, it's at this point that Naruto would look at Zabuza and through a split second would decide that that's his target, literally using nothing but animalistic instinct to try to decide who he's going to go after next. At this point, Naruto would rush on all fours at Zabuza's direction. As he would then jump up into the air, his claws would begin to quite literally elongate. As it's at this point that Naruto would literally lift it both hands up into the air as a bunch of wooden pillars would surround Zabuza, and Naruto would begin to quite literally rush at a Zabuza who was unable to move, mind you, as he would slash at Zabuza's throat, creating 3 slices straight into Zabuza's throat, as Zabuza's head just goes limp, and Zabuza would take his final breath. At this point, Naruto would look at Kakashi's direction as Kakashi would take 1 step back, take out a kunai, and say, "Naruto, don't lose sense of yourself." But Naruto would let out a screech as he would begin to run in Kakashi's direction. However, it's at this moment that Naruto's body would just fall. So much chakra, so much exhaustion, so much pain has gone through Naruto in this mere instant that Naruto's body simply could not keep up with what was going down. And so Naruto would end up passing out. After this, however, about 5 minutes or so, Gato's men would arrive on the scene, and from here we would have a scene very different than the one in the original. Originally, Zabuza was the one who ended up taking out Gato and his men, but instead what ends up going down this time is Kakashi, weakened and while doesn't have a lot of chakra left, would end up having to unfortunately rush in there, take out a bunch of Gato's men, create a bunch of shadow clone jutsu, and then finally arrive towards Gato. He would be the one who ends up landing the finishing blow. After this, however, after a bunch of Gato's men run off, Kakashi would fall down onto the ground into literal unconsciousness, as they would end up having to stay in that area for about 1 extra week than they do in canon, meaning that they're going to be staying at Tazuna's house for a little longer than they should. But when they would wake up, they would finally end up making their way towards the Hidden Leaf Village, where at the end of this whole mission, that bridge would still be named the Great Naruto Bridge. And that, ladies and gentlemen, concludes the Land of the Waves arc. We're of course going to keep on going because I have nothing to do, mind you. I literally am sitting on a bed all day, literally. That's all I have to do. And just in case you guys forgot, if the audio quality does sound a little bit different than it normally does, apologies, but not too much I can do about it. Hopefully it still sounds good enough that you guys will still enjoy this video. But just keep in mind, if the audio quality changed from like the first 40 minutes up until this point, just keep in mind that it's 2 different days and my voice tends to change and like alter within volume and levels each and every single day. So just keep that in mind. That being said though, what ends up happening is I need to take a quick water break, so BRB. Okay, so what ends up happening after my water break is they all finally end up making their way back towards the Hidden Leaf Village. Now, a lot of you guys might be thinking, okay, so they ended up having to be there for 1 extra week. What happens to everything else? Like, what ends up happening in this version? Well, what ends up happening in this version is I'm going to say that the Chunin exams are going to be held back by 1 week just for plot convenience, because I didn't take into account how this would affect the story of Naruto. So obviously after all of this happens, what ends up going down is all of them return to the village. However, you know what guys, I know I said that it's all held back by 1 week, but let's not do that instead. Instead, while they're on their way back, Kakashi would actually finally begin to tell Team 7 about the Chunin exams. And because they end up arriving late, they never end up having the encounter with Gaara, Kankuro, or Tamari's team. Because, simply put, Konohamaru was never there, and Naruto never ends up running into him, leading to no little altercation. So the only thing that truly ends up happening is that now they all know that they have like literally 1 day to prepare for the Chunin exams, because all of the whole entire team was like, yeah, sure, we're down to do it. You know what I mean? Like Naruto said that's all he wants. He wants to become Chunin and become powerful so he can become Hokage. Sasuke would say that he needs to take these steps in order to achieve his goals. Sakura, being a yes man or yes woman, would literally just be like, okay, if Sasuke wants to, then I want to too. You know what I mean? So this would literally cause the beginning of the Chunin exams arc. Now, for this, we did fortunately end up skipping a little bit of what ends up happening in the original. The stuff ends up happening in the original. Sorry guys, I was a little cut off because I ended up looking at that one Weeb's message. He just messaged me on Discord. That aside though, what ends up happening is basically they all end up making their way towards the Chunin exams area. You know what I mean? And when they do arrive, they would end up running into a boy with bushy eyebrows, a bowl cut, and a green tight jumpsuit. At this point, the boy would walk over towards Sakura's direction and say, "You are an angel." He would begin to pretty much hype Sakura up so much, saying that she's beautiful, that nothing he's ever seen could ever compare to her, and yada yada yada. Sakura would be like, "You creep, get away from me. Get those eyebrows away from me." You know what I mean? Like, Rock Lee would have his heart broken, and at this point, he would just be like, "Oh, very, very well." She would say that she only has eyes for Sasuke. As Rock Lee, hearing this, is like, Sasuke Uchiha? He would look at Sasuke as he would say, "I need you to fight me for Sakura's love." As, he would just get into his fighting position, but Neji would walk towards their direction, and seeing Sasuke, he would quite literally like smirk a little bit and say, "So, this is the famous Sasuke, the Uchiha clan member? I'm not impressed. I see there's a reason now why your whole clan was wiped out." As Sasuke would get enraged, and he would literally be ready to go over there and fight Neji, but Naruto would grab his arm tightly as he would say, "It's not the time yet." Even though the real reason is Naruto can sense that Neji is nothing to be played around with. And so what ends up happening is Naruto would proceed to pretty much look at Neji's direction as he would say, "If you want to mess with somebody on the team, how about you talk that way about someone like me?" As Sasuke hearing this would be like, "What? Someone like him? Does he think he's stronger than me or something?" Kind of like that he wants to be the alpha, but he really isn't type attitude. You know what I mean? So what ends up going down here is Neji would proceed to scoff as he would look at Lee and say, "Come on, Lee, let's go." Lee would say, "But what about my fight?" As Neji would say, "You'll get your fight when we start the test. Now let's go." So Lee would look at Neji's direction and say, "Fine." He would begin to walk off, as it's at this point that my guy was right around the corner and was hoping that the fight did go down. But he would walk over towards the student and he would be like, "I'm so proud of you for not starting that battle. You will get your chance to fight against the Uchihas sometime during this exam." Rock Lee would say, "Yes, Sensei," as they would end up literally leaving. Now, quick thing, I just want to make a quick connection. Cobra Kai and Rock Lee and my guy have a little bit of things in common. I'm just saying. I don't know if I'm the only one who personally sees that, but Johnny Lawrence and Miguel's relationship and my guy and Rock Lee's relationship, little bit in common. So I don't know, but I'm just saying those Cobra Kai writers might have taken a little bit of notes from Naruto. That's all I'm saying. But anyways, what ends up happening after this is all of them are all of them are pretty much taken into the room where they will be having to take their written portion of the exam. I don't care about this part, so we're going to literally just skip over. I hate this part. It's so boring. It literally is just Naruto saying that he's not going to quit. He's yada, yada, yada. However, that doesn't happen. He says, let's see, what should he say? He says that he's not going to quit and stays there. He writes down like 3 problems, and that is that when it comes to the written portion. Anko at this point would come crashing in through the window as she would end up literally making it inside, and seeing all the students who are left would say, "You getting soft on me?" As she would look at the proctor of the exam and say that most other years there would have been at least half of this, saying that hopefully a lot of them get cut down in the forest of death. As she would look at all of the contestants left, smile, as she would then proceed to say, "Follow me outside, maggots." At this point, Anko would basically begin to explain what the death forest is and then make everybody sign these forms of consent, pretty much saying that they're cool with dying in the forest if that happens. And so everybody would sign these forms, and from here what would end up happening is Team 7 would end up having noticing, not having, but noticing that someone is looking at them. In particular, a ninja from the village hidden in the grass, I believe it was. The secret disguise that Orochimaru was wearing during this time was like something about like the hidden in the grass or sound or something like that. So we would see Orochimaru staring Sasuke very menacingly, and Sasuke does not like that. He's about to say something, but at this point Anko would say that the test is about to begin. Now everybody would end up making their way towards the forest, and Orochimaru would take very clear note of where Naruto's Team 7 is going to be heading off to. Now when this is all happening, Orochimaru does know about Naruto and his ability of using wood style. This is something that is very commonly known because after like Naruto has been training with Yamato for all these years, and the village obviously knowing about Naruto's existence would end up of course being informed of the fact that Naruto has these abilities, the wood style abilities that the first Hokage had. So Orochimaru does not only want Sasuke, he wants both Naruto and Sasuke. And if there's a way for him to gain the abilities of wood style and Sasuke, he's definitely going to do it. However, he's more focused on the Sharingan because he's already tried his experiments with wood style, and if he just does get Naruto's body, then he's cool with it. But mostly, Orochimaru is interested in the Sharingan, the abilities of the dojutsu of the Uchiha clan. So what ends up happening here is Team 7 would end up making their way towards the forest. Immediately as they do this, they would proceed to walk into the forest a couple miles in, and they would proceed to run as they get more into the forest. At this point, Naruto would end up saying that he has to go take a leak, and Sasuke, taking note of this, would tell Naruto a password which he knew Naruto was definitely going to be forgetting. By the way, guys, one thing that I definitely forgot to mention was after Naruto came back from his mission, he ended up going to Ichiraku's ramen shop and eating a whole 4 bowls of ramen after leaving and then making his way towards the Chunin exams area. So Naruto has a lot of food in his system, if you get what I'm saying. And what ends up happening here is Naruto would take a little longer than usual, and eventually a gigantic snake would come in out of nowhere trying to ambush Naruto. Naruto would have just finished doing his business and would barely be able to quite literally like jump out of the way. Now when he jumps out of the way, the snake would come crashing in as it would break 4 trees like in a row. It would just slam into 4 trees, causing the trees to go down. Sasuke would hear this giant crash and would immediately be on guard, and it's at this point that Naruto, or a fake Naruto, would arrive in front of him. Now he would ask for the password, and this person would end up giving him the password. Not only that, but the pouch that Naruto has for his ninja tools would be on his left side of his leg when Naruto's is on his right, and this would cause Sasuke to immediately be like, yeah, you're not the real Naruto, show yourself. This would cause Orochimaru to basically undo the transformation jutsu and show Sasuke his true form. At this point, Orochimaru would begin to pretty much let out a little bit of bloodlust, which would cause Sasuke to be put in place. He would be terrified, put simply. At this point though, Naruto would quite literally be fighting against this gigantic snake, and Naruto would decide that enough is enough. Naruto would clench both hands together as 2 gigantic wooden arms would come crashing, and they would crush the snake's head in as Naruto would jump on top of the trees, rushing back towards his team's direction. Now when he does arrive, he would arrive to a sight that isn't the best thing he'll ever see. Orochimaru would have his fangs literally stabbed right into Sasuke's neck, as Naruto, seeing this, would say, "Sasuke!" At this point, Sasuke would look at Naruto and he would say, "Ah!" falling onto the ground, as immediately these 2 dark marks would be on his neck. Naruto, seeing this, would say, I wasn't fast enough," as he would proceed to quite literally look at Orochimaru's direction, and this time his eyes would glow red. However, instead of just having the normal like aura, he would have a full 1 tail come out. Naruto would blitz at Orochimaru's direction as he would try to attack at him, but Orochimaru would jump back laughing, saying that that's it, like literally mocking Naruto for how powerful he is. Because keep in mind, Orochimaru with no arms was able to keep up with a Naruto who had a 4 tails cloak activated, and was literally bloodlusted in the Tenchi Bridge when Naruto was not only older but stronger as well. So if we take all of that into account, we can see that Naruto is probably not going to be able to take out Orochimaru. What ends up happening is Orochimaru would literally subdue Naruto and would proceed to pretty much tighten the 5-pronged seal on his belly. As at this point, Naruto would be put into unconsciousness and Sakura would be tasked with taking care of both Naruto and Sasuke. From here, things would quite literally play out much like they do in canon, with Sasuke waking up and literally breaking one of the Sound Genin's arms, just snapping them in half. At this point, the Rock Lee stuff would happen. Sakura would cut her hair. Sakura would bite the Sound Genin, and that would pretty much be that. They would then end up making their way towards the Chunin Tower, toward the Chunin Exams Tower, and this is where they would finally have time to recuperate. Kakashi would end up tightening or creating a seal for the Curse Mark Jutsu that was pretty much placed on him by Orochimaru, and from here, what ends up happening is Fourth Third would end up informing everybody, and I mean everybody, about how they're going to be needing to do preliminaries because too many people passed. So all of the original fights end up going down just like they do in canon. So yeah, that's pretty much what ends up happening here. However, I am going to cover the fights because some of them do end up happening a little different than how they go in canon. So who's ready to rumble? Nah, I'm just kidding. So basically, starting off with fight number 1, the first fight that we will be getting into is going to be Sasuke versus the ninja that he had to fight in the original version of events. In this version, this literally goes just like it does in canon. There's literally nothing to cover here. Let's just say that it's done with less difficulty than it was in canon. Sasuke doesn't get more chakra stolen from him from this ninja because he is a lot stronger than the original Sasuke. And so Sasuke versus the random Leaf Village that can pretty much steal chakra from people ends up concluding, and we can now go on to the next battle, which will actually have a different outcome than it did in the original. Naruto versus Kiba. And yeah, so what ends up happening is Kiba would look at Naruto's direction and smile, as Kiba would actually have his confidence go up so much, thinking that he's going to be fighting one of the people who was candidate for Rookie of the Year. He would think that, oh, this is going to be too easy because Naruto was not actually Rookie of the Year. It still ended up being Sasuke, but Naruto was a very close second. So what ended up happening here is Kiba is thinking that this is going to be a perfect way for him to show just how much he's improved. But oh, Kiba, you're about to be so wrong. What ends up happening here is Naruto would jump over the railings as Kiba would say, "Akamaru, let's go!" Immediately, Akamaru would bark as he would proceed to jump down with Kiba, and both of them would make their way towards the center of the arena, where the proctor would say, "Alright guys, don't kill each other, yada yada yada," explain the rules. And at this point, as soon as the battle would start, Naruto would look at Kiba as he would say, "Alright, let's do this." The proctor would say, "Go," and at this point, Kiba would say, "Akamaru, fang over fang," as immediately Akamaru would transform into Kiba himself, and from here, it would proceed to literally turn himself into a drill, as they would create the fang over fang jutsu. Oh, give me a second, guys. I gotta take a pause real quick. Okay, I'm much better now. Anyways, so yeah, like I said, Kiba would use the wolf fang over fang jutsu, as we would have Naruto literally staring down this drill that's coming at his direction. Immediately, Naruto would pull both of his hands onto the ground as this gigantic wooden beam would just be right in front of him. Now, Kiba would end up piercing right into it as he would go through the entire thing, but Naruto would be able to jump out of the way as Naruto would proceed to, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, I had to stop the recording real quick again, but like I was saying, the wolf fang over fang would come towards Naruto's direction. Naruto would cause this gigantic wooden beam to appear in front of him so that he could get out of the way, and Kiba would literally drill right through the entire thing. Now when Kiba comes out, he would look at Naruto and say, "Don't be a coward, fight me," as he would then say, "Akamaru," and the dog would pretty much just be like, "Arf." You know, at this point, what would end up going down is they would proceed to literally look at each other, and from here, Akamaru and Kiba would blitz right at Naruto's direction, as they would both just they'd be doing their thing, and Akamaru would proceed to just rush at Kiba's direction, and they would both like literally lock together as they would create one giant spiral. You know what I mean? From here, what would end up happening is Naruto would proceed to essentially smile and say, all right, if you're using your ultimate jutsu, I suppose I should use mine. He would slam his hand onto the ground, as at this point, a gigantic wooden golem would rise from there, and Naruto would be standing atop of it, as Kiba would look at this gigantic monstrosity, this golem that almost fills up the entirety of the stadium, and Kiba would just look up at it as Akamaru proceeds to de-transform and begin to quiver in fear. Naruto would say that they have one chance to give up, as Kiba and everybody else watching would just be thinking there's no way that a Genin was able to do this. As Kiba would say, I yield. Yep, go ahead and get me out of here. I think I might have signed up for the wrong job. Being a ninja, just nah, bro. I'm leaving, guys. Yeah, bye. As Kiba would proceed to just walk out of there, like literally get out of there as soon as he sees the wood golem. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. The wood golem is like literally an S rank jutsu, so it's no surprise that that's the reaction that he got out of that. The wood golem is massive. I'm convinced that this Naruto could fight against One Tail's Gaara and probably stomp him at this point without even the 1 month of training from Jiraiya, if I really was to like manipulate the situation just a little bit. So with that being said, what ends up happening after this is we would have the famous battle between Neji and Hinata, as they would both end up having the same battle just like it goes in canon. Naruto would be enraged. However, Kakashi, my guy, Kurenai Sensei, and the proctor of the exams would stop Neji in his tracks, as Neji would then be told that he needs to back off. He won, and Naruto would make his claim, saying that if he ever fights him, that he better hope that he survives, because Naruto is enraged. He just saw somebody literally beat on somebody so badly that they could have died had one more strike been landed. So Naruto is enraged, and the rest of the battles pretty much go just like they do in canon, meaning Rock Lee versus Gaara, that still happens the way that it does in canon. Naruto would be very angry at the fact that Gaara took it so far in this battle. However, Naruto never really got to meet Gaara. He never even saw him before the exams. He never saw him like his aura never stood out to him that entire time. So when Naruto ended up seeing the power on display that Gaara showed, he was just shocked, to say the least. And so with that, the 1 month training arc between everybody pretty much commences, as the final 4 people who are pretty much selected to be the finalists in the Chunin exams would end up being Naruto, Sasuke, Neji. Yeah, sorry. I had like a mental brain fart for a second, but Neji and Gaara, as those are the 4 people who are going to be fighting. Now, obviously, we know that it's going to be Naruto versus Neji, and then Sasuke versus Gaara. So, for the following 1 month, Sasuke would actually be training with Kakashi Sensei, as he would learn the exact same things that he does in canon. However, this Sasuke would be a lot more stronger, with the goal of defeating Naruto in mind. So he ends up training a lot harder than he does in the original, which is hard to believe, seeing as Sasuke in the normal show trained extremely hard, from what you guys were able to see in the montage in the original anime and manga, in case you guys read that. So yeah, Sasuke did train very heavily and intensely, and Naruto did his fair share of intense training as well. And so what ends up happening here is the 1 month training would commence. Now, at first, Naruto would be told that he's literally going to be training with Ebisu Sensei. But when Naruto hears this, he would literally just be like, is this some kind of joke? Like you're playing with me, right? So he would quite literally proceed to tell Ebisu, no offense, but he doesn't want to train with him. And Ebisu would just be like, all right then, Naruto, if you can escape from me, then I guess I won't train with you. So Naruto would proceed to quite literally just be like, all right. And this is when Naruto would pull out a card that he usually never likes to pull out. He would use the multi-shadow clone Sexy Jutsu, as a bunch of women would appear in front of Ebisu and he would be knocked the F out. At this point, Ebisu would fall onto the ground, pass out, and blood would be leaking from his nose as Naruto successfully was able to run away. At this point, about 1 week of Naruto training himself on his own would go down until eventually he runs into an old man with white hair who was literally just perving on women inside of the hot steam baths places, whatever. The hot, I don't know, the hot springs. Yeah, hot springs. As Naruto sees this, he'd be like, "What are you doing, old man?" But Jiraiya would say, "Shh, shh, 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 shh. Be quiet, keep it down. We don't want to get caught." And Naruto would say, "You don't want to get caught. I have no problem with telling everybody." And Jiraiya would say, "Be quiet, kid. Come over here." He would grab Naruto as he's literally, "Look at that one over there." Naruto would proceed to look as Naruto's like, hey, yo, pause. I think I'm ready to become a man. Naruto looks at this one girl and then he would proceed to see somebody who he didn't expect to see in the hot steam like place. It would actually be one of the ninjas from another village, Tamari. Now when Naruto sees that, he's like, hubba bubba, you know what I mean? he's feeling some sort of way, you know what I mean? Like he wants to study with Tamari when he sees that. So what ends up happening here is Naruto becomes a little pervy because of Jiraiya, and from here what ends up happening is Naruto and Jiraiya pretty much introduce each other. Jiraiya would say, "I'm the legendary's Toad Sanin," and Naruto would be like, "You're who now?" As Jiraiya's like, you don't know about me?" And this would cause Jiraiya to start training with Naruto. Now this almost 1 month of training would pretty much just be based on Jiraiya trying to teach Naruto 2 jutsu. These 2 jutsus in particular would be the summoning jutsu, which Naruto would actually end up getting on his 5th attempt. See, the way that this goes down is the first jutsu that Naruto is pretty much going to be taught by Jiraiya is going to be the summoning jutsu. And the way that this goes down is Jiraiya told him to summon something, and when Naruto first summons something, he ends up actually summoning a little toad. Now, the reason that he summons a little toad is because Naruto was underestimating or thinking too much about how much chakra he needed to use. After this, he ended up summoning some like low-ranking, like some pretty mid-ranking toads from Mount Myoboku. But on his 5th attempt, Naruto would slam his hand onto the ground and say, "Summoning jutsu!" After the blood would leak onto the paper, Naruto would then find himself on top of the grand, not the grand, but the Chief Toad. Yeah, Chief Toad, as at this point, 24 hours of Naruto not falling off would commence, and to say the least, Naruto was definitely able to pass. All he had to do was use his chakra control on the bottom of his feet, and no matter what Gamabunta tried, he could not shake Naruto off. So after being convinced that Naruto was in fact the one who summoned him, Gamabunta ended up pretty much acknowledging Naruto, saying that, he has some respect for him. And after this, Jiraiya would then proceed to teach Naruto a little bit on how to keep the Nine Tails at bay and control a little bit of his chakra. And the first jutsu that Naruto would learn would actually be the wind style Gale Palm, as well as the wind bullet jutsu, because Naruto has a natural affinity for wind style. So that's the easiest thing that Jiraiya was able to teach him, meaning Naruto learns about wind styles and chakra natures way sooner than he does in canon. And so what ends up happening after this is Jiraiya would then go on to teach Naruto one of the most complicated jutsus that Naruto will ever have to learn, the Rasengan. Now, when Naruto is learning the Rasengan, he would literally have to take the entirety of the whole rest of the time that he and Jiraiya were training, meaning that literally 95% of the training that he did with Jiraiya was trying to learn the Rasengan. And on the final day before the Chunin exams, Naruto was able to finally put the pieces together. However, the morning of the Chunin exams is the day where Naruto was able to perfect the jutsu. And speaking of the morning, Naruto is late for the Chunin exams, so he would literally be rushing to the little arena where he's going to be having his fight against Neji with a whole new desire, a burning flame in his body. This is where I'm going to be leaving off a little part of the recording, and the next part of the recording that you guys will hear is going to be like a couple hours ahead, or maybe the next day after this. I don't know, I'm not too sure, but yeah, just know that. Anyways, I'm gonna go take a break. Peace.
to tell you all about the sponsor of today's video, Fandom. Now guys, in case you guys haven't heard, Fandom is an awesome anime merch company which you guys can get to by clicking the link down below in the description. That will take you to their website, which you guys can get onto, and right now they're currently actually having a pretty big sale, plus the 10% discount code that I'm going to be offering you guys, so it's pretty much a no-brainer. Up on screen, you guys should have been seeing a bunch of their merchandise that they have to offer. They have literally everything ranging from My Hero to Naruto to One Punch Man to Seven Deadly Sins, and any mainstream animes that you guys can think of. Pretty sure they even have some Flash merchandise too, in case you guys are interested in that, wink wink. That being said though guys, if you guys do want some dope anime merch, go to their website, click on whatever you guys might want, make sure you select the right sizing, and also use code Xehther for 10% off a discount. That being said, let's get right back into what happens with this freaky situation.
Okay, I feel great. It has now officially been 4 days ever since my surgery, and now I feel revitalized. I feel like I can truly come on this mic and tell you guys a story worthy of this channel. So obviously, since you guys literally just heard what was happening and it's been like a whole 2 days for me, I think that it's going to be a little strange having the audio levels go from high to low, but just bear with me guys, seeing as I am recording on different separate days. So we will be picking off right where I left off. Naruto would literally be rushing towards the stadium to essentially have his fight with Neji. Now, when Naruto does arrive at the stadium, it is at this point that the proctor would say, "Oh, it looks like he did arrive." Neji would look down at the ground as he would smirk, looking at Naruto saying, "You should have stayed gone." As Naruto would look at Neji, and Neji would look at him and say, "Just because you have the jutsu of the first Hokage does not make you special, Naruto. I will show you that the Hyuga clan is far more powerful and long since surpassed the power of the first Hokage." As Neji is delusional. And so, with this, Naruto would look at Neji's direction as he would simply say, "Oh, how wrong you are, Neji." At this point, Neji would smirk and he would say, "Fine then, let us commence." As at this point, the proctor would say, "Alright, I want a fair battle. Don't kill each other." As he would look at Naruto and then basically nod his head, look at Neji, nod his head, bring his hand down and say, "Begin." At this point, Naruto and Neji would both stare at each other as Neji at this point would shoot a bunch of wind palms. Like he would shoot air palm, just throwing a bunch of palm attacks at Naruto's direction. To which Naruto would proceed to quite literally just stand there. He would stand and take the full brunt force of the attack. Neji seeing this would be like, strange, as he would jump up into the air saying, "I saw you the whole time. These eyes can see all." As at this point, Naruto, the Naruto that stood in the way of the palms was nothing more but a wood clone. As at this point, the real Naruto would come out of the ground as Neji would proceed to jump up into the air and shoot a wind palm straight at Naruto's direction. Naruto would create a wind dome around himself so that he wouldn't be hit with the blunt force, and at this point he would jump out of it as Neji would be expecting him to. At this point, Neji would quite literally be standing at point blank range to Naruto, and Naruto would proceed to get hit with 5 palms by Neji. At this point, Neji would be blown back by Naruto as he would say "Bleh!" and he would then proceed to basically shoot a wind-style wind bullet jutsu at the ground, causing a huge amount of gust of wind to blow up, and Neji would be pushed back slightly, enough for Naruto to create some distance. At this point, when Naruto has the distance, he would say, "So looks like it's not going to be so easy." He would say, "Multi-shadow clone jutsu," as literally 50 clones would appear in out of nowhere, and Neji would say, "Palm rotation," as at this point he would begin to rotate in so many different directions as all the clones would rush in, but all of them would turn into a puff of smoke almost as fast as they appeared, as Neji would look at Naruto's direction smirking, saying that "I'm nothing like your last opponent. I'm someone who will actually hit you back." As at this point, Kiba would be in the stands angered, saying, "Naruto, give him a good beating for me, will ya?" Naruto would look at Kiba's direction, give him a thumbs up as Neji's running at him at Naruto at full speed, as he is ready to say "one bomb," but before he can even land the attack, Naruto would quite literally proceed to say "got you now," as vines would appear from the ground and they would begin to wrap around Neji's arms and legs, causing Neji to quite literally be held in one position. It's at this point that Naruto would say, "Looks like it's now time that I put an end to you and your cockiness. Let me show you the fear that you put into Hinata when she had nothing that she could have done while you came in to attack her with the intent to kill. I'll show you that same intent." Immediately, the air would thicken as Naruto's bloodlust would become very, very apparent. And Naruto would look at Neji as he would create a Rasengan! Like literally double the size of a normal Rasengan, as he would shove it right into Neji's abdominal area, as Neji would be sent flying, crashing into a wall, and Neji would pass out right into unconsciousness. At this point, Naruto would be looked at the crowd as he would finally, for the first time in his life, hear cheering. It's at this point that Naruto would look onto the crowd as he would see his father figure. The man who has practically raised him ever since he was 4 years old. Teuchi, or the ramen guy, however it is you say his name. He would be cheering, as well as his daughter saying, "Naruto, do your best!" A bunch of people would be cheering in the stands. People who, are relatively at the situation of Naruto being the Nine Tails, they're like, we don't really care. And then like the people who hate Naruto are just sitting there looking at the people who are cheering for him like disgust. He killed so many of us and you guys are gonna cheer for that nine-tailed brat? They would voice their own opinions and Naruto would go off into the stands as he would simply sit down and wait for Sasuke. 5 minutes would pass as Sasuke would still not arrive, and finally with seconds to spare he would arrive in a puff of smoke alongside Kakashi, as Kakashi would say, "Sorry we're so late." As Sasuke would appear in normal fashion with the same haircut, the same outfit style that he had in the original, as the battle against Gaara would commence. Now, I would start to explain this battle and say that it changes so much because Sasuke is a little more stronger than he is in canon. However, if I am being very honest with myself, and if I'm being honest with you guys, this battle does not really change, no matter how powerful Sasuke gets. It would start off with Sasuke replicating Rock Lee's taijutsu, shocking Gaara into being like, yo, I might have to actually try. It's at this point that Gaara would then begin to whip out the ultimate defense, and from here, no matter what jutsu Sasuke uses, he would attempt to use jutsus, but they wouldn't be able to crack this dome. And so, Sasuke would be left with no other choice but to run over to the top of the wall and run down as he would yell, "Chidori!" immediately rushing towards the direction of Gaara. Now, when Gaara looks at the blood that appears when Sasuke pierces the cage, this would be so much more blood than what would have happened in the original, because this Sasuke would have actually pierced right into Gaara, which would cause Gaara to immediately fall into unconsciousness, passing out, and in an instant, a cloud of smoke and sand would appear in the middle of the arena. Shukaku in all of his glory would be standing right there as Hiruzen and everybody in the stands would begin freaking out. Shukaku would let out a massive roar, as it's at this point that Naruto would say, "What is that thing?" And at this point, Gaara would proceed to literally be atop of Shukaku as Shukaku begins to ravage, literally destroying random hidden leaf villagers. A bunch of ninjas would begin evacuation as somebody would place a paralysis jutsu on everybody, causing a bunch of people to pass out except for Shinobi. So at this point, so many lives would begin to be lost as Shukaku would be freaking out and it would actually be going towards Sasuke, trying to kill him. Sasuke would barely be able to dodge, because if he was barely able to dodge slightly transformed Gaara, then I doubt he would be able to dodge transformed full Shukaku. So at this point, what ends up happening is Sasuke is about to be crushed when out of nowhere, a boy with brown hair and a Leaf Village headband around his neck would literally appear in front of Sasuke as he would say, "Don't worry, Sasuke." Two gigantic hands would come out of the earth as they would stop Shukaku from hitting Sasuke, as Naruto would grab Sasuke, put him over his shoulders as he would say, "Let's go," and they would begin to immediately run out of there. At this point, Naruto would ask Sasuke what that attack was that he used. Sasuke would explain that he learned it from Kakashi sensei, and Naruto would say that he's gonna need his help for this one. Sasuke would say, "Alright, how do I help?" And at this point, Naruto would proceed to say, "Well, here's how." He would create the biggest giant golem that he's ever created, literally comparable to the size of Gamabunta, and at this point, he would look at Shukaku as he and Sasuke both stand atop this thing. At this point, Sasuke would be freaking out, thinking, this is like a Kage level battle. What am I doing here? But Naruto would look at Sasuke as he would say, shoot a bunch of jutsus at him. Sasuke would be like, yeah, as he would say, fire style, fire phoenix jutsu, shooting a bunch of like jutsus at him. At this point, Sasuke would then say, all right, now again, fire style, fireball jutsu, just shooting a bunch of flame style jutsus at Shukaku. And at this point, simultaneously, Naruto would be looking at Shukaku, who is just literally standing there atop of everything, literally just causing destruction, as the golem would be rushing in at Shukaku and throw a giant punch, which would connect with Shukaku's face, causing him to be rattled and sent flying into the floor. At this point, Shukaku would then be like, as it would stand up and shoot a gigantic Biju blast right at the wooden golem, which would cause a gigantic hole to appear in the middle of the golem's stomach. But Naruto would literally hold out two hand signs as wood would begin to literally start closing up the hole. And at this point, Sasuke would be watching this as he's in awe. At this point, Naruto would say, we're gonna get in close, and Sasuke, I need you to wake Gaara up. At this point, Sasuke would say, right. And at this point, Naruto would get so close to the Shukaku that he could basically taste the sand in his mouth, and he would rush over towards Gaara. However, when he tries to, Gaara would grab him with some sand on his leg. Here is when Sasuke would shine for a little bit and create a Chidori as he would cut the sand, causing Naruto to be let free, and Sasuke would rush at Shukaku, or Gaara, sorry, as he would proceed to smack him on the head, causing Gaara to wake up abruptly. And this is when immediately Shukaku's body would begin to fall onto the ground, as a bunch of sand would simply begin to deteriorate onto the ground. And as this battle was going down, Orochimaru and Hiruzen's battle still ended up playing out just like it did in canon, meaning that they didn't get interrupted, and Orochimaru ended up losing his arms, but Hiruzen ended up unfortunately losing his life. He died to the hands of Orochimaru. As this battle concludes, Naruto, Sasuke, and Gaara would all be laying on the floor, as Gaara would question Naruto. Why? Why are you so much stronger than me? As at this point, Naruto would say, because, as he's getting up, throwing all the sand up off of him, as he says, because I have friends, I have people there that I have to fight for. That's what pushes me to be stronger. He would look at Sasuke as he would stand up fully, extending his hand out towards Sasuke, saying, let's go. As at this point, the two sit in the village hidden in the sand brothers of Gaara, meaning Kankuro and Tamaru, would appear, grab Gaara, and get out of there, with Gaara realizing that he's always had people there for him to care about. However, he just never listened. And at this point, Sasuke and Naruto would proceed to help out with taking out a bunch of hidden sound village ninjas, or hidden in the grass village ninjas, because, you know, those are the people that ended up attacking, as well as sand shinobi that ended up attacking in the whole ordeal as well. But from here, what ends up pretty much taking place is they end up having a funeral for Hiruzen. They end up trying to get Jiraiya, yes, Jiraiya, to become a Hokage, and during this time, Naruto would literally just be working at Ichiraku Ramen shop during this entire time, literally just eating a bowl of ramen, when out of nowhere, Jiraiya barges in, grabs Naruto by the hand, and says, we have to go look for somebody now. Naruto would be like, we gotta go, bye, as he ends up telling Ichiraku he has to go, and he'd be like, that kid, as he would begin to pick up the slack and finish washing the dishes Naruto was supposed to wash. At this point, Naruto would look at Jiraiya and say, hey old man, what's the point? What are you doing? Where are you taking me? Jiraiya would say, we're looking for the next Hokage. As Naruto's eyes would widen, he would say, the next Hokage? And yep, Naruto is about to meet his grandmother. And he's not about to know that that's his grandmother, okay? Because if in the original Naruto, Tsunade had no idea Naruto was her grandson, and Naruto had no idea he was her grandson, then I doubt that in this version that would be the case either. So what ends up going down here is they would end up making their way towards Tsunade for retrieving the next Hokage of the Hidden Leaf Village. During this time, Jiraiya would begin to question Naruto why he doesn't use Earth style and Water style even though he has Wood style. Naruto would be like, what do you mean? And this is when Jiraiya would make it very apparent that if he's able to use Wood style, it's because he can use Earth and Water together in tandem. Naruto would say, I never really tried it, But when he does end up trying it, he would find out he has a huge affinity for water chakra and earth style chakra, creating his very first mud wall jutsu, as he would then proceed to be taught the water dragon jutsu by Jiraiya throughout this entire journey, because instead of learning the Rasengan, he's going to be learning other high level jutsus, and also trying to create the big ball Rasengan as well. Even though he has like a small little version of it, you know, he wants to create the big ball Rasengan. So what ends up going down is they end up, of course, going, you know, town to town looking for Tsunade, until eventually they end up about 1 week in arriving to a certain town when Jiraiya decides that it's about time that he goes off to do a little bit of research. Now, when Jiraiya is over there looking for some beachy girls to do his research, what ends up happening is he finds a girl. Okay, now Jiraiya finds a little lady, and he ends up leaving Naruto in a hotel all by himself. Now, Naruto being by himself wouldn't expect any knocks on his doors. So when out of nowhere Naruto was just chilling there in his room and he hears this random knocking at the door, Naruto would open the door as he would be greeted to red eyes, those of Itachi Uchiha, and a man that looks like a literal shark with blue skin. Naruto would jump back, slam the door in Itachi's face, but a sword would pierce straight through it, knocking the door down. This would be Kisame. At this point, Naruto would shoot a wind-style bullet right at the wall of the room that he's in as he jumps onto the roof. Now, almost immediately as he would get there, Itachi and Kisame would literally surround him, with Itachi being in front and Kisame being behind him. At this point, Kisame would go to grab his blade as he would say, "Listen, kid, I'm not here to play any games. We can either do this the hard way, or the easy way, or the hard way." As he would look at Naruto, smile, but Itachi would simply mutter under his breath, "You're coming with us." And at this point, Naruto would say, "To hell I am," as he would proceed to quite literally jump up into the air and say, "What style?" Itachi would hear that jutsu as two gigantic hands would come out of the earth and from the building as they would come in and try to squash Itachi like a bug. Itachi would jump out of the way, and at this point would be shocked at the fact that this Jinchuriki, who's also the Nine Tails, has access to wood style. At this point, Naruto would be coming back down from the air, so he would say, "Rasengan!" And Itachi, seeing this jutsu, would be like, "High level jutsu, eh?" He would literally proceed to just jump away as Naruto would slam the Rasengan into the building. At this point, Kisame would come rushing in with his blade, as Naruto would create a wood wall literally right behind him without even knowing he did it, meaning his body literally moved on its own for a split second. After this, Naruto turns around to react and says, "When did I?" As out of nowhere, Itachi would kick Naruto into another building. Now, Naruto would get flung into the building and literally crawl out with bits and pieces of the building coming out. Immediately, Naruto would say, "Sorry about that," as he would jump back up, going to fight against Itachi and Kisame. But at this time, the legendary Toad Sani Jiraiya would have finally arrived, and when he does, Naruto and Jiraiya would turn towards the direction of Kisame and Itachi as he would create his Toad Mouth Jutsu. From here, Itachi would begin to say, "We'll see you next time, Naruto Uzumaki," as he would use Amaterasu to burn a hole straight in the Toad Mouth Jutsu and get out of there as fast as they could. At this point, Itachi would say that his reasoning was that, the legendary Sun was there and that he'd much rather not fight them. So what ends up happening here is they end up basically having to pretty much leave that area. Naruto uses his wood style to help fix the buildings that he pretty much had a hand in destroying, and from here they end up traveling across 2 more towns until eventually they end up stumbling across a bar where Jiraiya, out of the corner of his eyes, would see the hair of a blonde woman with blue eyes, I believe, or brown eyes. Tsunade has brown eyes, right? I think she does, yeah. And a green robe. Now when Jiraiya sees this, he would smile, thinking, "Bingo." And he would tell Naruto by signaling over to him to follow his lead. At this point, Jiraiya would take a seat and say, "Can I please get 2 drinks?" As Jiraiya would look at Tsunade, and Tsunade would see Jiraiya, say, "What are you doing here?" Tsunade would ask Jiraiya what he's doing here, and Jiraiya would just be like, "Oh, just here to catch up with an old friend." I'm pretty sure you've already heard about what happened to Hiruzen. Tsunade would say that damn old fool ended up going out there and getting himself killed. He could have retired sooner and maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't have ended up this way. As she would take a drink of the booze. At this point, Naruto hearing these words, he would be angered, but it's not like he's about to slam the table and say, I challenge you already. At this point, Jiraiya would continue to talk to Tsunade as Tsunade is drunk. But when she finally points her attention towards Naruto, she would see the spitting image of her younger brother. As she chokes on her booze and says, who's that? For a split second, she would say the name of her brother, but she would then realize that he passed away and that there's no way that that could be him. No jutsu in this world could bring him back unless Orochimaru used that jutsu. As at this point, Jiraiya would say his name is Naruto Uzumaki. He would say that he's the son of somebody. And Tsunade would be like, who's that? But at this point, Jiraiya would say that's unimportant. What's important here is that we need you back at the village. Tsunade would say, the hell with that village, I'm not going back, especially not to be Hokage. Why don't you do it? But Jiraiya would say that he doesn't seem fit for that job. That's where she comes in. That's the reason that he's been looking for her. Tsunade would say that he's out of luck and that he needs to go find someone else, as she would begin to disrespect all of the previous Hokage before her. And when Naruto hears all of these words coming from her mouth, he would slam his fist onto the table as he would say, now where do you get off? Disrespecting all these great men who sacrificed their lives for this village, while you sit here and drink your life away. You're a worthless shinobi if you ask me, and you shouldn't even be deemed respectable or even have the honor of being chosen to be a Hokage. Some of us would die for that role. Some of us would die for that ranking. Me, Naruto, I'm gonna be Hokage someday, and whether you become a Hokage or not doesn't matter. We'll find someone else. He would begin to literally walk off as he would say, this old bag of a woman. As Tsunade would stand up, break the table, and say, who the hell do you think that kid is, Jiraiya? And she would immediately proceed to literally walk outside following Naruto, as she would say that, Naruto was some little brat, that he doesn't know what he's talking about. And Tsunade would then begin to say, you know what, kid? I'm feeling a little nice today. How about we have a little bit of a duel? As she would begin to explain to Naruto that they will fight and that whoever wins is going to be getting a little bet had for them. And so Tsunade would look at Naruto as Naruto would literally nod and say, sure thing. He would proceed to literally get into fighting position as Tsunade would just drop everything. And, her little helper, I don't even know the lady's name, but the one with the black hair and the pig would be like, Tsunade, no. But, ultimately Tsunade would rush at Naruto's direction. No, Naruto would rush at Tsunade as Tsunade punches at the ground. Naruto immediately in the air would clench his hands together as wood would literally begin to close the area that Tsunade ended up pretty much destroying. And she would immediately be thrown off by this. As Naruto reaches her closer and closer, she would see the spitting image of her younger brother for just a second, as she is thrown off by the fact that not only did this boy use wood style, but he looks like the spitting image of her younger brother. And Naruto would create a Rasengan, slamming it right into Tsunade's chest, as she would be blown away into a building, and Naruto would stand atop of her, as he would say, I won, give me your necklace. Tsunade would be just completely knocked out, and the next morning she would wake up angered, thinking, how could I have lost? What is going on? You know what I mean? At this point, Jiraiya would literally be right with Naruto. And what ends up happening here is Tsunade would end up basically going over to see Naruto the very next morning. However, she would literally end up telling them that she has something to do beforehand. And so the Orochimaru Tsunade meetup thing would happen. Now, when this ends up happening, what ultimately happens here is Tsunade would end up telling Orochimaru that he can go F himself, that she's not going to be doing it for him. As she tries to use medical ninjutsu to kill Orochimaru, but Kabuto would stop her, and from here, she would end up having to hold her own against Kabuto until Naruto and Jiraiya finally arrive. Once they do arrive, it would be Tsunade and Jiraiya versus Orochimaru, and then it would be Naruto versus Kabuto. This battle ends up going a whole lot different than it does in the normal canon, because Tsunade and Jiraiya would both take out their summonings. Tsunade would see as, Jiraiya and Orochimaru are fighting, and during the fight, Orochimaru would get hurt a bit, causing a little bit of blood to leak out. Tsunade would get scared, and at this point, she would be watching Naruto fight against Kabuto. As at this point, Naruto just literally ended up slamming a Rasengan into Kabuto without much resistance from Kabuto. Because yeah, Kabuto is kind of strong, but he's having to fight against somebody who can fight long range, close range, mid range. He's a bag with no end of tricks, like literally. And so after this is done, Naruto would proceed to say that he can help them, as he would slam his fist onto the ground and create the first Hokage's jutsu, a gigantic wooden golem. Simultaneously, Naruto would create a water dragon jutsu as he would shoot it at Orochimaru's direction, but Orochimaru would laugh and summon something. It would be Manda. As Manda takes the brute force of the blow, at this point Naruto would say, fine, they need something else, something that can kill a snake. So Naruto would proceed to create 2 twin wooden dragon jutsus. As at this point, 2 wooden dragons would appear out of the ground, rushing at Orochimaru's direction. And Orochimaru, seeing Tsunade, Jiraiya, and a kid who has the ability of wood style, who he fought against before a long time ago but never used this jutsu, would ultimately end up reverse summoning himself out of there before the jutsu could even connect. And from here, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Naruto would end up making their way towards the village hidden in the leaves, with Kabuto being taken away by Orochimaru, even though I forgot to mention it. And yeah, that's pretty much what ends up happening in terms of that whole entire encounter. What happens from here on out is, let's see. They arrive at the village, and Tsunade ends up literally talking to Naruto about how he looks a lot like somebody she used to know, and then proceeds to tell Naruto that she supports him in the dream of becoming the next Hokage. She would then tell Naruto that she's going to be keeping that seat warm for him for whenever he's ready to claim it. Naruto would smile, and so Tsunade would tell Naruto that she would, basically, like, she's rooting for Naruto. And so this is when Naruto would end up going on the 3-year training journey with Jiraiya. Now, honestly, I would have Naruto train with Tsunade because of the fact that Tsunade, she likes Naruto a little bit more in this version. But I think I'm just going to stick with Jiraiya. So, yeah, that's what ends up happening in terms of that stuff. And give me a second, guys, because right now I am currently under a thick blanket, and my legs are just like, they're getting very, very toasty, if I do say so myself. So, yeah. So what ends up happening from here is they end up going on their 3-year journey, and when that concludes, they return to the village. Now, when they do return to the village, Naruto would return, and when everybody in the village sees Naruto on top of this gigantic thing, he would end up basically immediately seeing Sakura, who was just like, so Naruto, do you see anything different? Naruto would say that, yeah, she's totally grown up a lot, saying that, he hasn't seen her in a minute, yada, yada, yada. I'm guessing many of you guys might be wondering, yo, but what happened to Sasuke? Where's Sasuke? Sasuke stayed in the village. Yeah, he stayed in the village. He stayed. The Sound 4, come on. They're not coming back. Orochimaru saw the power of Naruto. He was not going to send those Sound 4 to try to go take Sasuke. When Naruto was in the village, Tsunade's in the village, Jiraiya's in the village. It's not happening, guys. I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen this time. Also, one more thing that doesn't happen this time is the encounter between Itachi and Sasuke. So Sasuke's hate never ends up growing more than it normally does. And so this whole event got changed. Sasuke stayed in the village and ended up actually training alongside Kakashi Sensei during that whole entire time that they had to train. Those 3 years were put to very good use. Sasuke ended up learning basically everything he would have learned with Orochimaru, perfected his 3 Tomoe Sharingan, and that would pretty much just be how that goes. The rest is just history. Naruto would have ended up learning more things than he does in the original, because this is a different Naruto. This Naruto actually ends up learning the Rasen Shuriken. Yeah, you guys heard that right. This time, Jiraiya took Naruto's training very, very seriously. And since Naruto already knows about chakra natures and how to do all that, I'm guessing he also, during those 3 years, would have ended up learning with Jiraiya this time how to actually use a power that they never ended up learning until Kakashi showed it to Naruto. The secret of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, or the Clone Jutsu in and of itself. So with that, he ended up using the Jutsu to end up mastering and learning the Rasen Shuriken. He ended up learning that at about late in the 2-year point, and from there, his training kind of just went on. Not only did Naruto learn how to use and wield the Rasengan, he also ended up learning and mastering it completely, meaning that it's not just a jutsu that he has to run at you with and like tap you with it for it to finally work. It's a jutsu that Naruto is actually able to throw. He's also able to create two, one in each hand, by himself, able to actually construct and manipulate the chakra natures all by himself and throw them like projectiles. Another thing that Naruto and Jiraiya both ended up mastering is Sage Mode, something that the original Jiraiya never ended up basically bothering to learn. But this Jiraiya, this is a whole different version. This Jiraiya actually does end up learning the Sage Mode, and so what ends up happening here is Jiraiya is a whole lot stronger than we would expect him to be. With that said, what ends up going on from here is Naruto also, I know, you guys are probably like, yo, chill out with these power-ups. But this is just what happened. I'm just giving you guys the material. You guys, this is just what I think happens. So what ends up happening from here is Naruto has full mastery over 5 tails of the Biju's chakra. Literally 5 tails of the Biju's chakra. Yep, you guys heard that right. So when he does return to the village, obviously he ends up being greeted by Sasuke and Sakura, Hinata, a bunch of other people. And from here, he ends up going into Tsunade's office, where he reports all the success that this mission has had. And when he does end up reporting all this stuff, they're all actually genuinely very happy to find out that Naruto's training journey was definitely a success. From here, Kakashi would end up arriving, and Naruto would gift him a Makeout Paradise book. From here, Kakashi would get on out of there, and Naruto would be given just enough time to go visit Ichiraku and go get a bowl of his favorite food. He would get about like 7 bowls of Ichiraku ramen, and he would actually enjoy it alongside Sasuke and Sakura, who would end up catching up. Now, along midway through eating, they would be interrupted by Kakashi Sensei, who would say that why don't they have another version of the bell test. So from here, what ends up happening is they end up having to have another version of the bell test, but Kakashi is like very proud of Sasuke in this version because Sasuke is pretty much stronger than him already. So instead of having Sasuke even participate, what ends up happening is they actually want to see just how far Naruto has gone. So Kakashi would say, I would do that if it wasn't for the fact that you guys are probably way more powerful than before. Instead, it's actually going to be a fight between Sakura and myself and Naruto and Sasuke. From here, Sakura versus Kakashi would go down, which I'm not even going to cover because I don't want to bother with covering anything Sakura related, but I will cover Naruto versus Sasuke. What ends up happening in this battle is Sasuke would proceed to activate his 3 Tomoe Sharingan, and Naruto would say, oh, so that's how we're going to play it. Fine then. As instantly, Naruto would proceed to like tap into Sage Mode. And at this point, Sasuke would be like, huh, very interesting, Naruto. However, Naruto's Sage Mode is actually a little different than what I'm pretty sure many of you guys are expecting. Pretty sure many of you guys are like, Toad Sage Mode, right? Well, yeah, he has Toad Sage Mode, but he also has Wood Sage Mode, which is strange. You guys know how Hashirama gets like black markings all over his face? Well, Naruto gets black markings all over his face, and he also gets the Sage Mode eyes of the Toad Miyaboku Sage Mode. He is able to simultaneously access both Sage Modes. How broken is that? His multiplier is literally times 2 times another 2. So it's really broken, to say the least, guys. And so what ends up happening from here is Naruto looks at Sasuke, and Sasuke's like, what? Looking at the chakra flow within Naruto's body, he's like, this is so strange. But from here, what ends up basically going down is Naruto and Sasuke rush at each other. But when Naruto blitzes at Sasuke, when he rushes at him, he would move so fast in Sasuke's eyes that he wasn't even able to perceive his movements. And Naruto would appear behind Sasuke, as Sasuke is barely able to block his attack with his sword, as he slightly is able to take it out and block Naruto's kunai. At this point, he jumps back and coats his blade with the Chidori, and it becomes a Chidori blade as he runs at Naruto's direction and slices at Naruto. Naruto would jump back as he lands on a small wooden golem, and a bunch of random ass little creatures from the ground would appear. A bunch of wooden animals. As they would charge at Sasuke, Sasuke would smile, thinking that that's it, as he would proceed to charge a bunch of electricity chakra through the ground, and these wooden constructs would just fall. They would be destroyed. At this point, Naruto would say, looks like I might need a little bit more help then, as 2 dragons from the ground would just come in out of nowhere and charge at Sasuke's direction. Sasuke would be thrown completely off guard, and from here he would get collapsed or crushed by one of the mouths of one of the twin dragons, as they would grab him and literally throw him into the air. From this point, Naruto would appear behind Sasuke as he grabs his body and begins turning and spinning in the air, saying, sorry Rock Lee, let me borrow this technique for a second. He begins to pile drive Sasuke towards the ground as Sasuke substitutes out of there and proceeds to just be away from Naruto, panting heavily, saying, Naruto, when did you? But Naruto would not let up. He would rush back at Sasuke's direction, and before Naruto could land the blow, Kakashi would say that's enough. Sasuke would just look at Naruto as he's on one knee and says, how did you get so strong? Naruto would say that he's been training really hard, saying that he didn't even pull out all of the cards yet. With Sasuke just being like, that wasn't your full power, Naruto would say, this is my full power, as immediately 5 tails would appear behind Naruto, as his aura would go from monstrous to godly. And from here, Sasuke would be like, this is incredible. From here, Naruto would then proceed to say, oh yeah, and that Rasengan I used to have, check this out. From his hand, he would create a huge Rasengan, throw it at the forest, and it would begin to cut so many trees. At this point, Naruto would chuckle and hold his hands behind his head as he's like, so yeah, that's what I did. Sasuke would be like, incredible, as he would be thinking that he never got the chance to showcase Kirin, but if he did, he wonders how this battle would have gone. He doesn't even know if he could have been able to hit Naruto with Kirin, but Sasuke thinks that if he would have, he probably would have won the battle. However, that concludes their little chit chat and meetup time. From here, what ends up basically going down is they're all informed about the hidden sand village and how the Kazekage Gaara was basically taken by the Akatsuki. Now, when Team 7 ends up pretty much finding this out, they would end up embarking on their mission. Tsunade would pretty much task Kakashi, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura with the mission of finding Gaara, retrieving him, and returning him back to his village. From here, they would end up making their 2-day journey to the hidden sand village, where Sakura would end up encountering Kankuro. From here, I'm really not going to cover any of this stuff because I find it personally a little bit pointless, seeing as these events are not really going to be changing too much. Of course, Kakashi is still going to be attacked by Old Lady Chiho, who mistakes him for the White Fang, and from here, we're just kind of going to skip to when Sakura ends up killing Kankuro, and she is given a little bit of clues on where the Akatsuki took Gaara. From here, Kankuro would weakly try to get up, stating that he's going to come help, but he would end up having to fall back onto the ground into unconsciousness, as his body is far too weak to come help on the mission. From here, Naruto would be informed of everything that happened and how Gaara ended up becoming a Kage before even he could, which would low-key cause Naruto to get a little salty, but in the end, Naruto would smile, thinking that at least Gaara was able to change his ways, make something of himself. Naruto would smile, thinking that he might have made a little bit of an impact himself. And from here, he would end up embarking to find the cave. From here, they would find it. Sakura would punch it down. Deidara and Sasori would both be awaiting them. As from here, this whole situation ends up going so much different than than how it does in canon. Because Deidara and Sasori are actually caught off guard while they just finished extracting the full one-tailed beast from Gaara. And Gaara's body is exuding 0% chakra. So when Naruto sees this, he would just be bloodlusted. And without any seconds to spare, Naruto would activate all 5 tails as he would instantly fall into Sage mode. And as if it was an instant, Naruto would blitz right at Sasori's direction, destroying him completely with a Rasen Shuriken, obliterating the puppet that he has on him and completely destroying Sasori's puppet body, obliterating it. He explodes. From here, Naruto would be in a blind rage as he would think, after everything Gaara did, you took his life away from him. He would blitz at Deidara's direction, and in that instant, he would lose himself as a 6th tail would appear. At this point, he would go haywire as Deidara is simply trying to calm Naruto. He's just like, yo, he just killed Sasori. This man is so much stronger than me, and he just killed Sasori like it was nothing. Deidara is truly terrified. And at this point, Naruto would begin to try to kill Deidara in the outside world. However, in Naruto's mindscape, what ends up essentially going down here is Naruto would look at Deidara as he would quite literally just be like, you're dead. But in his mind, he would end up being literally he's seen Kurama, and Kurama's telling him that release the seal, I'll help you kill all the Akatsuki members, I'll do this, I'll do that. And when Naruto begins to try to tear the seal apart, Minato would step in, reseal it, and Naruto would finally meet his father, Minato Namikaze, for the first time. When Naruto sees his father Minato, he would say, who the hell are you? But Minato would say, I'm your father, Naruto. Naruto would end up having the same experience that he does with Minato in the original, and he would finally snap out of it, just as he was about to attack his very own Team 7. Sasuke would have at this point been pretty badly injured by the 6-tailed Naruto. As he would snap back into consciousness, he would say, I'm sorry, Sasuke. Sasuke would say, better be, as literally one of his arms was broken, but Sakura would come in and heal his arm, and they would end up taking Sasuke's body. Old Lady Chiho would of course end up sacrificing herself in order to bring back the Kazekage, saying that she's lived a long enough life already, and now that her grandson is finally dead, she can finally put her old self to rest. So she would help Gaara come back to life. Naruto would smile. They would return to the village, and from here, this is where events in the whole story are finally now going to begin to change drastically. Now, in the original version of events, Sasori was the only one who really was killed. Deidara was damaged. Yes, he was damaged, but he was still alive. You know what I mean? So this version of Deidara and Sasori are both dead, and they ended up doing so with relative ease. Gaara is back to life but doesn't have Shukaku, so this would cause a little bit of a change in the Akatsuki system. At this point, we would basically have Itachi getting ready to fight against Sasuke, so that fight ends up pretty much going down. Now, I'm not saying that it happens right now, but what I'm saying is that fight is very, very close to happening very, very soon. So how that stuff ends up pretty much playing out is Itachi is pretty much getting ready to send Sasuke a letter of come find me here at the Uchiha compound. That whole situation basically ends up going down, and as Sasuke is going to be having his fight against his brother Itachi, which I am going to be saying is going to go very, very, very similar to how it does in canon, would change with one very, very specific aspect. During this time, beforehand, Sasuke was getting ready and being basically told by Tsunade that he was allowed to go fight his brother. However, during this point simultaneously, Naruto had just gotten word from Shikamaru about Hidan and Kakuzu. So while Sasuke was going to be fighting Itachi, Naruto was going to be fighting against Hidan and Kakuzu. So with that being said, the Hidan and Kakuzu mission ends up going down. Naruto ends up completely obliterating Kakuzu with his Rasengan, much easier than he does in canon. And Hidan would be taken out by Shikamaru just like he does in canon. However, after that battle is over, Naruto would tap into his Five Tails mode, and he would proceed to essentially rush towards the location where Itachi and Sasuke are currently fighting. When Naruto would arrive, that battle would basically be on his last legs, and he would see as Itachi walks slowly towards Sasuke's direction, taps him on his forehead and says, "I will always love you," as Itachi falls onto the ground. And Sasuke is left there in utter shock. Orochimaru has been sealed. Obito is currently watching. The Kisame is watching as well, right? And from here, what ends up pretty much going down is Naruto grabs Sasuke, who pretty much passes out, and ends up pretty much taking him away before Obito could make his move. So Obito from the shadows would think, it's not the time yet, as he would warp away, and Naruto would end up pretty much grabbing Itachi's body as well, as during about, let's say, a couple of hours span, he would make his way back towards the village. And this is where Sasuke would pretty much be questioning why his big brother said, "I love you." Like, what is going on? Like everything he's believed in is pretty much crumbling right before him, because Sasuke was like, yo, like, didn't he like hate me? Like, he tried to kill our clan. Like, what is going on? Like, why is he saying he loves me all of a sudden? Biggest plot twist of 2021. Greatest anime betrayal of all time. Anyways, what ends up pretty much happening here is he ends up getting a transplant with Itachi's eyes. And because Itachi said he loved them, he was like so shocked that he activated his Mangekyo Sharingan in that moment. So from here, he ends up getting his eyes swapped with Itachi, meaning Sasuke now has the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. And he ends up automatically getting the perfect Susanoo, which is just broken to say the least, but it's what happens. Now Naruto, not knowing what he basically just averted, this whole like Danzo being killed, all this other crazy stuff, he avoided all that stuff. But what does end up happening is Naruto still does have his Kodomatsu Kami within him, because during the mission to the Gaara stuff, he did end up running into Itachi, and Itachi planted the Kodomatsu Kami Jutsu into Naruto, just like in the original, because I said I wasn't going to cover stuff that stayed the same. So yeah, apologies if you guys were a little confused on that note, but that is pretty much how that ends up going down. And from here, what ends up happening is Sasuke pretty much and Naruto are both in the village when out of nowhere, a huge like blow of wind and energy would just be shot straight through the village. As much different to the original events of canon, in this version, literally Deidara, Sasori, Hidan, Kakuzu, and Itachi, some of the most hard-hitting members of the Akatsuki have already been taken down. If they don't act now, they're probably not going to be getting their hands on any more Jinchurikis unless they are able to take down the Hidden Leaf Village. So when Pain attacks the village and that stuff ends up happening, what doesn't end up happening is what's it called? Like what doesn't end up happening is Naruto pretty much like how do I put this? I've literally confused myself. Okay, guys, so I did that. Okay, what ends up happening is pretty much the Akatsuki want to take out the Hidden Leaf Village because of the fact that they're growing too powerful by the day, and they need to take out the Hidden Leaf Village because before they become a problem to them. Meaning that Jiraiya, when he did go to the Rain Village and try to find Pain, he wasn't actually able to find anything because Pain was not in the village at that time. So Jiraiya never ends up dying, but he is on his way back to the village while the village is being attacked. So currently, a bunch of people just ended up losing their lives, and Naruto currently at this point is just in a room where a bunch of things were blown up, a bunch of like shinobi that were in the room with them were ended up hurt, and Naruto not happy at all, to say the least. So in an instant, Naruto was ready to start throwing hands with whoever was responsible for this, and from here, what ends up happening is they would end up going outside to see a man floating in the air. Immediately, he would look at Sasuke and say, "Go!" As Sasuke just says, "Right." Sasuke would end up activating his Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and from here, both of the ninjas would end up rushing towards the Akatsuki members that are there respectively. Naruto would rush at the Diva Path in the air with 5 tails activated as he throws a Rasen Shuriken straight at it. It's able to use the push jutsu to pretty much shoot the Rasengan back at Naruto, but Naruto is able to quite literally spin mid-air, dodge his own jutsu, and be so close to the Diva Path that he is not able to dodge, as he creates yet another Rasen Shuriken, obliterating the Diva Path. From here, a bunch of the rest of the shinobi that ended up fighting against Paths of Pain would end up having their own individual battles, and from here, Naruto would basically rush at a masked man. As at this point, we would have Sasuke actually fighting against Konan. That battle is a little interesting, but I'm not really going to be covering it, because the way that it goes down is Sasuke wins, okay? He has the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, so come on now. He beats Konan a little easily. Kisame is one of the people there who's actually going to be a hard hitter, but he's actually going to be fighting against my guy in this situation. And they don't exactly have no Edo Tenseis because Kabuto never ended up having that whole stuff happen with himself. The whole Naruto story was literally flipped on its head because of Naruto being a Senju, and all of these small little things ending up contributing to changing the end of the story. I know at first many of my what ifs don't seem to change the story, but once we get more and more into it, we end up seeing that one event can actually lead to massive events with the grand scheme of the story in and of itself. And so from here, what ends up pretty much going down is they end up fighting against the rest of the Akatsuki members. That ends up going good until the final match is finally in their way. Obito versus Naruto and Sasuke. Now, as soon as this battle starts, I'm guessing many of you guys probably thought that 5-tailed Naruto was going to be able to beat Obito, or because he has double sage mode. No, it doesn't work like that. Naruto proceeds to get beat. Sasuke proceeds to get beat down. And from here, Naruto literally has to talk to the 9 tails internally. At this point, the 9 tails finally ends up agreeing to giving Naruto his own chakra, and here, Naruto ends up unlocking KCM2. However, as this is happening, Sasuke's fighting against the masked man, but the masked man stabs Sasuke through the heart, kills him, and he ends up meeting the Sage of the Six Paths, which ends up granting him Sage of Six Paths powers. And from here, Naruto then getting KCM2, having his Sage mode stuff activated, meeting him, actually not meeting his mother in this version, would finally now slightly be able to fight against Obito. They still can't hit him though. But one person would end up arriving to the battlefield, which would change the course of the battle drastically. Kakashi Sensei! Naruto would say, as he would look at Kakashi was coming in, and as Obito would pretty much get away from the area by using Kamui, Kakashi would actually Kamui, try to Kamui Obito. And what he ends up realizing is that when he Kamui's Obito, while Obito is pretty much in the other plane of existence, he ends up reversing the Kamui's effect, meaning that instead of having Obito be intangible, he then suddenly becomes tangible. So Naruto was actually able to hit him point blank with a Rasen Shuriken, which ended up damaging him a little bit, but at the end of the day, Obito ended up surviving a Chidori playing to the heart, so I doubt that that's going to be able to kill him. From here, they have an insane battle. Naruto would throw a kick at his head as Sasuke would come in to pierce him with a Chidori, but Obito would phase through it as by using chains, he would wrap them around Naruto's neck as he would choke him for a second before Sasuke comes in and kicks Obito, letting Naruto have just enough time to get free from the chains And from here, what would go down is a battle for the books, a legendary battle. Naruto's wood style creations against Obito. At this point, Naruto would end up creating a gigantic behemoth, the 1,000 arm Buddha statue. And Obito, seeing this, would say, "Magnificent." As at this point, he would rush at Naruto's direction, trying to steal the Nine Tails. Sasuke, Kakashi, and Naruto are fighting against Obito in this all-out brawl. This is it. Like, this is for all the biscuits, you know what I mean? Like, this is the fight that they've all been waiting for. And this is a true legendary fight. Now, guys, if you guys heard the audio cut for a little second, I do apologize. But what ends up happening here is that they continue battling against Obito, and eventually, Naruto and Sasuke are both able to simultaneously hit Obito after Obito ends up literally killing Naruto and extracting the Nine Tails from him. So, is it really a win-win? I don't know, man. But fortunately, we have Naruto, who ends up pretty much being giving the Sage of Six Paths powers. Guys, if you guys hear a bunch of random barking in the background, I heavily apologize. A bunch of dogs are literally fighting outside. Not my problem, but they're barking at each other. You guys know how that goes. So yeah, apologies for that. But what ends up happening here is literally Naruto would proceed to be given the powers of the Sage of the Six Paths, and from here this battle is a complete stomp. There is nothing this Obito will be able to do to stop a Senju Naruto, seeing as he pretty much has infinite chakra, and he could continue fighting for like literally weeks if he truly wanted to, because of the massive reserves of chakra that he has within himself. And so Naruto would end up defeating Obito and stopping the organization known as the Akatsuki. Now, the only real small threat to the story is Kabuto, if you could even really consider that a threat. But from here, what ends up happening, guys, is that the village is literally just being rebuilt. Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura and Hinata end up having a little happy ending because, you know, Naruto ends up studying with Hinata, if you get what I'm putting down, and creating Boruto, which leads to Boruto Next Generations, which I'm not covering. Nope, not happening. That's the end of the story, guys. It has been a wild ride. This story was definitely very lit. And that pretty much concludes What If Naruto Was a Senju.
But with the story finally reaching its conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I just have one question for you all. What did you guys think about today's video? What did you guys think about What If Naruto Was a Senju? Did you guys like the storyline, and did you guys think that I made him a little bit too overpowered? What did you guys think about the story? Please make sure to leave your thoughts and comments down below, as well as hit that like button if you haven't already, as well as subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel, seeing as literally over 70% of the people watching this channel are not subscribed. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to the channel and become part of the Xehther army. That being said, it has been your boy Xehther. I love each and every single one of you guys. I hope you guys go on to have an amazing day, and that has been it for your boy today. I am signing out. Peace.